Chapter 607. The five dragon aspects fought against each other for tens of thousands of years due to the enmity between good and evil. This was a scene that ordinary people might not even get to see once in their lives. If not for the fact that they were worried that it would harm themselves, it would definitely be an extremely relaxing scene for the hundreds of thousands of soldiers and civilians below. Unfortunately, this was not an IMAX movie and there was no place for the popcorn-eating crowd to sit and watch the show. The battle between the five ancient dragon kings in the sky could easily drop anything, such as scales or corrosive secretions from the body of the dragon of death. If they were hit or affected, it would be a disaster. For a moment, the entire Lordaeron city was in chaos. The Duque had tricked Wings of Death and Tyrina's. If he did not run away, then he would be an idiot. Of course, the situation now was a little tricky, because he was carrying Princess Kalia Menethil in his arms. She was wearing a snow-white gauze dress that looked almost like a wedding gown, and a pair of white jade balls under the protection of a low-cut top trembled under his eyes. Sob, sob, sob. I, Duque, am no longer that little virgin who only fantasized about 10 terabytes romantic action movies. I've eaten meat. Please, princess, don't tempt me, okay? Ever since I lost my moral integrity as Mediv, I haven't been able to maintain it. Who knew that the princess did not seem to hear his thoughts at all? She wrapped her arms around his neck as if to make it easier for Duque. But her breasts were getting closer. Damn it. Damn it. Flash. It was not a spell that could be used casually. It was a spell that could disintegrate a person into elemental particles and then reassemble them from 20 yards away. Although it was perfect, it would stop when it encountered an obstacle. However, the air was filled with flying rubble and using Flash would cost him his life in minutes. Duque could only activate his ice shield, blow away the stones that came out of nowhere and run with the princess in his arms. Duque, you've finally come to pick me up. It's just like what I've seen in my dreams countless times. Wait a minute. What's with this affectionate dialogue? Although you didn't ride a white horse, you saved me from the hands of an evil dragon. You are indeed my destined knight. Although you're not wrong, but I'm really just passing by. Passing by, you understand? But in every knight and princess novel, there will always be a happy ending, right? What are you going to do next? Father is a prideful person. He said that I'm not allowed to marry anyone except for Presto. If that's the case, I'll definitely be imprisoned in Lordaeron's palace for the rest of my life. Duque shuddered. He crossed a corridor filled with the corpses of guards and quickly turned into a storeroom. He closed the door, not letting Kalia see the guards outside who were scared to death by the dragon's might. As Duque put down Princess's leg, he panted heavily and thought to himself, damn it, I really have to train my body when I go back this time. This was the nth time Duque had sworn to exercise. Please ignore the sentence above. Duque spoke. Okay, Princess Kalia. Please call me Kalia. The princess was unexpectedly persistent on this matter. At the same time, her arms did not let go of Duque's neck. Their faces were still very close. Okay, Kalia, I understand your situation. Since I promised to give you freedom, I will definitely do it. Duque strived to be a gentleman, even if he knew from the bottom of his heart that he was just a hypocrite at this moment. A hypocrite is a hypocrite. There were always some beautiful things in the world that people couldn't bear to destroy, such as Princess Kalia's pure beauty. How are you going to give me freedom? Princess Kalia's clear blue eyes showed hope and a smile. Duque quickly said, I've already calculated the extent of damage caused by Deathwing's acid. I need you to provide something that can prove your identity. I will throw it into a ball of acid and fake evidence that you are dead. At the same time, I will open a portal and send you directly to a safe place. Kalia tilted her head. She quickly made a decision. First, she took off her sapphire earrings, then the headdress on her forehead, followed by the sapphire necklace on her chest. Finally, she pulled on the ropes around her waist and something happened that left Duque dumbfounded. Princess Kalia's tight waistband, along with her gorgeous white muslin dress, was taken off in front of Duque. Of course, it wasn't that there was nothing under the long dress. It was just a white bra that perfectly showed the shape of her chest, white panties and white stockings with suspenders. All of this stunned Duque. This was comparable to the underwear models of Victoria's Secret before Duque traveled to this world. In fact, Princess Kalia's figure was not inferior to those supermodels at all. Duque swallowed his saliva. Oh my god. Princess, don't you know what it means to provoke others into committing a crime? I'm telling you, don't tease me anymore. I don't have very high moral integrity. I might really push you down. 2 seconds later, Duque retreated in defeat. Because he was shocked to find that this dignified Princess Royal of Lordaeron really had no concept of defense. Even though she was shy about the man's gaze in her completely clear eyes, she did not even consider the possibility of being dragged by him to play coquetry. She trusted Duque completely. Duque, is there anything I can wear? Duque bared his teeth and threw his mage robe to Kalia from the storage space. Mage robes were good. Most mage robes didn't discriminate between men and women at all. They could just be put on. Kalia quickly put it on. What do we do now? Wait for me to open the door. Open the door? Kalia immediately saw that Duque had actually opened a portal in the small storage space. Isn't there only designated places in Lordaeron that can open portals? Kalia was puzzled. Those low-level magic barriers have long been dismantled by Maligos, the king of magic. Oh, I see. Without saying anything more, Kalia subconsciously hugged Duque again and began her first trip to the portal in her life. 2 minutes later, the captain of the Lordaeron Palace Guards, who was leading a team of 30 royal guards in the palace, frantically looking for Tarina's or Princess Kalia, was pleasantly surprised to see Duque rushing towards him with Princess Kalia in his arms. Your Highness Kalia. Molev hurried over. The princess let out a cry of surprise. Duque, give me to him. He is our captain of the palace guards. Chapter 608. Duque breathed heavily and put the princess down. That's great. I'll leave the princess to you. I still need to make sure His Majesty Lang is safe. Duque did not waste any time and handed the princess over to Molev. Thank you, Duke Marcus. I'll take care of the princess. However, less than 30 seconds after they separated, something unexpected happened. Boom. A magic bombardment fell from the sky and hit the corridor of the palace. What followed was a terrifying shriek of death. No. Molev turned around in horror. He and more than 15 guards had witnessed this tragic scene. Princess Kalia didn't even have the chance to scream before she was hit by the acid of the wings of death. In an instant, not even her bones were left. Molev tried to pull the princess away at the last moment, but all he could do was pull the princess's white dress. No. Molev was furious. He tried to pull the princess out of the acid that had turned half of his subordinates and the princess into an unknown substance, but he was held back by his subordinates. Let me go. Let me go. I'm guilty. I'm guilty. The princess is dead. What's the point of me being the captain of the guards? Just let me die. Molev pulled out his sword and wanted to commit suicide. His subordinates stopped him. No. Sir, you are the captain of the guards. You have the duty to report this to His Majesty. Didn't you say that you gave your life to the Menethil royal family? It is his right to decide how you die. You have no right to commit suicide. No, the captain of the guards, who had been through countless hardships and had always been loyal to the Lordaeron royal family, shed tears of regret. He could not imagine what kind of expression His Majesty Tarina's would have when he heard the news. At the same time, far away in the western wilderness of the southern continent, a beautiful golden-haired girl looked at the vast fields. She took a deep breath of the thick, earthy scent of the winter fields. She puffed out her chest and sucked in her stomach. She tilted her head back and opened her arms, letting the cold wind blow through her hair. She let out a heartfelt gasp of admiration. Wow, so beautiful. Is this the scenery outside? Is this the air of freedom? The girl's beautiful blue eyes greedily absorbed everything in her vision into her mind. In the eyes of countless ordinary people, things that were incomparably simple and ordinary were so rare and fresh in the eyes of the young girl. Like a canary that broke free from its cage, she sang and cheered happily in this world. After taking off her luxurious high heels, the young lady stuck her slender and perfect jade-like feet into the ice-cold soil. She kicked away the thin snow that covered the field and used her toes to pick out pieces of black soil. Then just like that she danced around the field in the most elegant manner. This beautiful girl was naturally Princess Kalia. Duque used the true mirror image spell to perfectly imitate the princess and let a non-existent magic dummy wear the princess clothes. In the eyes of the world, the beautiful Kalia Menethil was already gone. Duque didn't disturb the excited Kalia. He let her party on the field. Anyone who stayed in a palace that seemed huge but was actually very small, or in a cage for 16 years would feel extremely depressed and depressed. This feeling of spiritual sublimation from breaking free from the cage was something that no outsider could understand. The air of freedom. Because she was too happy. Princess Kalia spun faster and faster. Because the mage robe didn't have any straps, the whole robe was like a long skirt, swaying at high speed. The white stockings in that pair of beautiful legs were not bad. Duque subconsciously covered his nose. Was this a sign that he was going to have a nosebleed? Oh no. I said I won't be a beast. Duque rubbed his eyebrows. Looking at Kalia's delicate and pure face, his restless heart calmed down. What a magical girl. At this time the crazy Kalia finally realized that she seemed to have lost her composure. She subconsciously lifted the hem of the mage robe like a skirt, and trotted towards Duque. Sorry. I'm too excited. Feel like I can see the outside world. I'm willing to die. Duque smiled sincerely. Kalia, don't joke. Since I promised you freedom, you will naturally have a lot of time to see the world. Kalia suddenly realized something and her mood became a little down. If I do this, will it bring you and my father a lot of trouble? Besides, when the Rotterdam Kingdom was in trouble, I felt really bad for running out alone like this. I'm not in trouble. I've perfectly killed you in Lordaeron. There won't be any evidence that I kidnapped or murdered you. As for your father, His Majesty Terina's, I want to say that everyone must be responsible for their own actions. Responsible? Kalia widened her eyes, which were so pure that there was not a trace of impurity in them, and blinked. Yes. As the leader of the Lordaeron Alliance, after signing the Equal Alliance Treaty, he coveted the Alliance's land. This is a true blasphemy to the name of the Alliance. Perhaps the Alterac king and nobles are guilty, but the people of Alterac are not. Lordaeron and Alterac are not enemies, but brothers of the same origin. I am ashamed of His Majesty Terina's for doing this. At this point Duque lowered her head. I have asked the Blue Dragon King Maligos to ensure the safety of the citizens of Lordaeron as much as possible, but there will always be losses. This is not my fault, nor yours or anyone else's. From the day His Majesty Terina's coveted Alterac's land and introduced the Wings of Death, Nesario, this was the destined outcome. If I hadn't discovered Nesario early and found the 4 Dragon Kings to kill him, Lordaeron would have been devoured by Nesario. Kalia shuddered. Although she was inexperienced, she could not imagine what would happen to the entire Rotterdam and even the entire alliance if she were to marry Presto. No, if she were to marry Nesario in name. Kalia thought for a while and finally accepted this reality. Then what should I do next? Do I need to hide in your Karazhan first? No, since I promised you freedom, I won't. I will fulfill my promise. Please allow me to introduce you to your companions who will be accompanying you on your adventures around the world in the coming days. Duque bowed elegantly. Then a few women appeared from behind the hill. They were a maid, a ranger, and an armored paladin. Chapter 609. Princess Kalia's sexy little mouth opened into an O shape. Although she had complete trust in Duque, but in her imagination, being able to hide outside the palace under Duque's protection was already the greatest happiness. Who would have thought that there would be something even better than happiness? Duque had actually fulfilled her wish without any discount. The first girl dressed as a maid stepped forward. She gave Kalia a very standard maid's salute. She had short black hair that was parted 3 to 7 times, and a beautiful yet slightly immature face. Although she was dressed in a typical black maid's outfit with white edges, her steps were very vigorous, without the slightest hint of a maid's style. Hello, Princess Kalia, I am Vanessa Van Cleef. I was originally Sir Marcus's exclusive maid, but now my cruel master thinks that I am a hindrance and abandoned me. I request your highness to take me in. Duque facepalmed. This little maid was really worrisome. Kalia was dumbfounded. Abandoned a maid? What is this? Duque smiled bitterly. Don't listen to Vanessa's nonsense. Her father is an important minister under me and he entrusted her to me. But I found out that she has an excellent talent as a thief. Keeping her by my side as a maid would be a waste of her talent, so it is better to let her go out and gain experience. In a few years, first when she grows up and second when she has experience, I will be of great use to her. Humph. That's more like it. Vanessa's little nose was raised to the sky. After saying that, she unexpectedly ignored Duque and grabbed Princess Kalia's hand. Hey, Sister Kalia, I heard that you want to give up your identity as a princess and travel the continent as an ordinary person. Is that true? Of course. Kalia did not hesitate. Then later, to avoid exposing my identity, I will only call you by your name and a pseudonym. Vanessa, who was a little scheming, seized the opportunity. No problem. Kalia didn't know that she had fallen into a trap, and was still very happy because of the other party's kindness. Always hearing the words Your Highness always made her uncomfortable. Duque continued. This ranger is Lilith Windrunner, the youngest sister of the Windrunner family. Although she looked like this, she was actually more than 300 years old. She had the unparalleled talent of the Windrunner family, but before she could step into the realm of heroes, her limelight was stolen by her 3 sisters during the battle at the Dark Portal. In fact, her kill record can be ranked in the top 20 in the Alliance. Kalia's mouth opened wider. Don't underestimate the top 20. It also depended on who was in the top 10. Duque, the publicly acknowledged nemesis of the orcs, was ranked number 1. Below them were the 3 Windrunner sisters and Antonidas, who was active in the Silverpine Forest battlefield. Next was a group of butcher princes. At that time there was Anduin Lothar of Quell, Zarim. And then there was Uther and the others who were known as the 5 Silver Saints after the charge of the 12 horsemen. Below them were High Lord Mograine, Abendis, Dalen Proudmoore, Daneth Trollbane, Curdran Wildhammer, and the 3 Bronzebeard brothers of Ironforge. These were fierce men who had shown extraordinary results during the war. If it wasn't for the fact that these guys in front of her were too fierce and left too deep an impression, she would definitely have the title of Alliance Hero. Even so, Lilith managed to occupy the top 20 without anyone noticing. The dignified princess of Lordaeron immediately trotted over like a fan, pulling Lilith's hand and asking questions. After the excitement subsided with great difficulty, Kalia realized that there was a third companion here. Neither she nor Duque minded Kalia's loss of composure. Duque said, "This is Lady Riataline. She was originally a priest of the Holy Light just like you. However, after the war that just ended she was a little agitated. She then became the disciple of my subordinate, Gavin Rad Misfortune, and became a holy knight. She is a very good vanguard. She will also follow you out to gain experience." Kalia's eyes immediately sparkled again. Her pure and unadorned personality easily won Riataline's favor. Duque also sighed. The 3 companions he had painstakingly arranged this time all had great backgrounds. In the original history, Vanessa would have become a boss. Lilith's original form, Rira's, had died, but now she had made a name for herself. The last one, Riataline, was even more impressive. Duque knew very well that it was the fault of the world shift. Riataline was originally a high elven priest who believed in the holy light. Her parents were killed by the Amani trolls, and she was raised by her mentor, the high-ranking priest Vonderal. In the war that had just ended, the green-skinned orcs and trolls were like a rampant plague that swept through the entire Long Song forest like a tide. The magnificent armor and shields of the high elves were as thin as paper in front of the brute force of the orcs. The vanguard of the elves was easily destroyed by the muscular army of orcs, ogres and golems. Riataline watched helplessly as her companions were killed by the strong orcs. In this cruel war that resulted in the deaths of hundreds of thousands of elves, Riataline began to question her unwavering belief in the holy light. Her holy light could only heal the soldiers who retreated from the battlefield, but could not resist the heavy hammers and axes of the orcs, nor could it resist the crazy magic bombardment of the 2-headed ogre mages. If the holy light really protected the high elves, why did the elves lose so badly? At the most critical stage of the war, she even picked up a spiked mace and charged at the orcs. However, the moment she charged, she was easily defeated by an orc laborer who was seen as the weakest. It was only because her comrades dragged her back that she managed to escape. She watched angrily as Orgrim left Kuel Salis with a mocking victory and countless ogres who had been strengthened by the storm altar. The home that the elves were so proud of had become a wasteland burned to ashes. At this time she saw Gavin Rad appear. This profession that perfectly combined the holy light and combat deeply touched her heart. In the eyes of the elves in this era, becoming a holy knight was a complete betrayal, but she did not care. She bid farewell to her good friend Theron and became Gavin Rat's disciple. With Duque's approval and protection, she became a holy knight trainee. According to Duque, after a few months of learning, it was time for her to train. Only Duque knew. Damn it, I tricked the leader of the Blood Elves Blood Knights from the future generation. Thanks to the great offset. In the end, he gave Kalia a magic mask that could turn a little beauty into a village girl, and gave Riadaline a magic locator and communication tool. Everything was done. Alright, I suggest that you travel to Stranglethorn Vale first. Call me if there's any danger. With Kalia's problem solved, Duque turned his attention to the north. Chapter 610. Nethario, are you dead? If you're not dead, just snort. Roar, you're not qualified. You really don't know how to cooperate. Can't you practice the lying dead swordsmanship properly? Are you really going to lie down for me to see? Also, I told you to snort, not roar. Roar. Nethario's voice came from the sky. It was clearly filled with pain and anger. On an empty balcony in Rotterdam, Duque, who looked like a bystander but was actually the culprit, tasted the delicacies left behind by his host without any restraint. Well, the great noble of Rotterdam and his servant were so scared that they hid in the basement. They had no idea that their balcony had been occupied by a shameless traitor. As Duke sat with his legs crossed, eating the snacks and drinking the warm wine, a melodious voice like that of an oriole suddenly came from behind him. Yo, you demolished someone's palace and you still have the nerve to stay here and have fun. Duque glanced back. Yes. The first thing that entered his eyes was the mermaid line on her abdomen that was still incomparably clear on her tights. Above that was naturally the pair of majestic hydral peaks, and further above that was, of course, the beautiful face that seemed to be angry. Hey Aurelia, don't spout nonsense. It was Deathwing who demolished the Palace of Rotterdam. If Terinas isn't satisfied, he can send the palace repair bill to Neltharion. Aurelia was really amused by Duque. She put her hands on her hips and laughed. When she finally finished laughing, she walked over and sat gracefully on the red velvet sofa beside Duque. When she did not show her wild side, Aurelia was a typical noble lady. Unfortunately, the Windrunner's demeanor only lasted for 3 seconds. Her temperament was like the wind in her bones, causing her to quickly reveal her true colors. Her bright smile carried a hint of ridicule. Duque, you're really willing? It's obviously a good opportunity to hide a mistress with the princesses, you said. Duque righteously recalled Princess Kalia's graceful female body in her underwear and said in a deep voice, not every kind of love is called possession. Sometimes appreciating and letting go is also a good way to praise beauty. You can choose not to believe me, but your sister Lilith is by Kalia's side. Alright, I'm not really jealous. Don't treat me as such a petty woman, okay? I know you're the real hero of the Alliance. After saying that, Aurelia didn't care if there were still people looking at them and directly gave Duque a hot kiss. Yes. That's more like it. After the kiss, Aurelia returned to the sofa and muttered in a low voice, even an old lady like me who has seen through the world is infatuated with you. I'm afraid that little girl Kalia will love you even more after she goes out. What? Duque didn't hear it. Nothing. I'm just talking to myself. Why isn't Nesario dead yet? Aurelia quickly diverted Duque's attention. It's not that simple. Nesario still has a trump card that he hasn't used. Alexstrasza and the others know that too. If there were no external forces involved under normal circumstances, Nesario would have fallen long ago under the premise that there was not much difference in individual combat power. He wouldn't have to wait for the cataclysm in the future. But, at this moment, heavy footsteps came from the stairs of the room behind the terrace. Duque, you're actually watching the show here? There was no need to ask to know that the loud voice belonged to Lothar. It wasn't just Lothar. Duque was a little surprised to find that it was actually Sasha leading Lang, Daylin, the Bronzebeard brothers Jurban and Kudrin. Below, a large group of guards from various countries were protecting the house impenetrably. Hey guys. Duque stood up with a wry smile while looking at Lothar with a slightly reproachful gaze. King Lang took the initiative to speak up. Don't blame Andoin. I know you asked us to take refuge in the basement for our own good. But, even the mastermind dares to watch the show here while we hide in the basement like clowns and shiver. Isn't that a disgrace to the Alliance warriors? Duque blinked. Lang, what you said makes sense. I'm actually speechless. Daylin came up and gently punched Duque's chest with his fist that was as big as a bowl. You're not kind. You actually didn't inform us that Presto is the wing of death. You even asked us to openly offend old man Terinas for your sake. Judging from Daylin's completely impolite tone, it was obvious that he no longer took the king of the most powerful human nation, Rotterdam, seriously. Magni also came up and patted the back of Duque's waist, causing Duque to grimace. Aren't you afraid that one of us will die because of an accident? Duque angrily retorted, Bullsh *T you old man. Even Nesario's dragon breath won't be able to kill you. Magni actually agreed. Yes, if Nesario stays on the ground and doesn't run, I'll slay a dragon for you to see. Damn it, you're level 10 in bragging and level 10 in irresponsibility, aren't you? Duque rolled his eyes. However, it doesn't seem appropriate to let the 5 dragon aspects fight above Rotterdam City, Jurban said worriedly. Aurelia laughed. Please, ever since Duque discovered Nesario, this cunning black dragon king has never left Rotterdam. Jurban was discouraged. Alright, I just want to know what will become of the Alliance. Lothar chimed in, we all want to know. At this moment, everyone looked at Duque. If it were anyone else, they would definitely pee their pants in fear when faced with so many kings. However, Duque was extremely calm. His smile was full of confidence, and his deep black eyes were full of certainty about the future. Under the pressure of a powerful foreign invasion, all countries will naturally unite. However, when the external pressure disappears, the countries will reveal their true colors. They only see the losses of their countries now but not the dangers in the future. Dangers? Kudrin frowned. Duque's gaze turned to the south, seemingly crossing the boundaries of the continent and landing on the huge door in the Crimson Land of Death. I wonder if everyone has noticed that the Door of Darkness cannot be destroyed? All the big shots gasped in unison. Lang said, you mean, the orcs are not extinct. If an evil warlock who is no less powerful than Ghoul, Dan appears on Draenor, where the orcs live, then it is entirely possible for the Door of Darkness to open again. It's just that I can't predict what will come out the next time it opens. The air suddenly became deathly silent. Duque continued, the Alliance must purify itself and become more united. Only then can it truly welcome a new life. Chapter 6:11. Fate was a wonderful thing. It had been 2.5 years and Duque had completely forgotten about life on Earth. However, Duque knew very well that without the memory line that extended from the distant Earth to the world of Azeroth and connected to Duque, Duque wouldn't have been able to get to this point. The Second War of the Dark Portal was over. The orcs who had slaughtered humans and become cruel and tyrannical because of the demon's blood were destined to withdraw from the stage of history along with the old tribes. It was the same for the Alliance. Although the alliance of 11 countries sounded like a great alliance, everything had to be eliminated in order for everything to be sublimated. It was not an easy task to evolve from the Rotterdam Alliance to the Great Alliance of the later generations. On the large balcony, Duque chatted with several kings who could be considered the absolute core of the alliance in the future. Duque was using his memories that transcended time and space to guide these kings bit by bit using the method of foresight. None of the kings were fools. They had their own beliefs, their own ideals, and their own requirements and hopes for the future of their race. It was not easy to fool them. The goods that Duque brought out were the best parts of the future alliance's operations. Equality, cooperation, mutual exchange, and the formation of emergency response forces were concepts that transcended time and space. These things even deeply fascinated these monarchs and the assistants and ministers standing behind them. If it weren't for the fact that there were still 5 dragon aspects fighting in the sky, they might really think that it was a salon full of research on the concept of governance. In the sky, the battle between the 5 dragon aspects had come to an end. In the previous battle between the dragon aspects, the lack of a strong vanguard like Alexstrasza gave Nesario an opportunity to chase the 3 dragon aspects who were weaker in melee combat like rabbits. This time, the existence of the Red Dragon Queen made Nesario completely lose the opportunity. Although Alexstrasza was a female dragon, her melee attacks were fierce. Because of the continuous recovery of her body by the power of life, she was the most daring to face Nesario head-on. In the game's standards, she was the strongest main tank, which was also the main tank. She alone attracted almost 70% of Nethario's firepower. Her overwhelming speed and mobility did not belong to Nesario's attack power. Almost every round of attacks, she was able to extract something from the injured black dragon. Even though a lot of her dragon skin and scales had been scratched, as long as Nesario didn't attack the same wound repeatedly, she would automatically recover perfectly in a few minutes. It was not one that looked as weak as paper, but one that had completely replicated the scales of ancient dragons that were impossibly tough to most beings in the world. In a sense, the 5 ancient dragon guardians were all cheating and cheating. Now it all depended on whose cheat was stronger. Alexstrasza was locked onto her health bar. Nosdorm was an accelerator. Maligos had unlimited firepower. Isra was a rogue software that kept popping up when you were playing the game, making it impossible for you to play happily. Then, what was Nesario's cheat? In the past, Nesario had an anti-damage halo, and his body was covered in acid. Anyone who touched him would die. But now what was Nesario's halo? Duque was not the only one who was curious. The 4 dragon guardians were also nervously speculating about Nesario's backup plan. The once mighty Black Dragon King was already in a miserable state. The experienced Alexstrasza and the unafraid Nosdorm launched a frenzied attack on his left eye that could not open. The wounds on the left side of his body were the most numerous. From the left dragon's neck to his left thigh, not a single part of his body was intact. The armor on the left half of his body that was used to hold his body in place had been torn off, and the lava that erupted from his body was destroying his body. From a human's point of view, Nesario's left arm had almost moved to his scapula. This was because the power that swelled from his body had swelled up on his left chest, causing his dragon body to be severely deformed. No one knew if Nesario's chest would explode in the next moment. Even Alexstrasza, who was not afraid of death, only dared to attack Nesario's left chest with her dragon's tail, and did not dare to pounce on him with her dragon claws. However, the other parts of his body were being attacked by the 4 rogue dragons unscrupulously. Nesario's wings were like a broken kite, full of holes. If he had not used a method similar to magic to make himself float in the air, he would have long fallen to the ground. Apart from the left side, which was the worst, his back, neck, and limbs were all injured to varying degrees. Some were magical, but most were physical. The 4 dragon guardians carefully and skillfully depleted his life force. They did not lack courage, but it was not worth it to sacrifice their lives for this traitor dragon. As time passed, the outcome of the battle in midair was finally decided. In terms of strength, Nesario did not have an advantage against 4 of them. The injuries from the previous battle had seriously affected his speed and defense. After suffering a series of heavy blows, the 4 dragon guardians finally saw an opportunity. It's done. Duque's magic message was transmitted to the spiritual sea of the 4 dragon guardians at the same time. It was because of the system prompt. Deathwing's HP has fallen below 20%, entering the beheading stage. 20% HP was a very delicate point. Entering this stage meant that the target was on the verge of death and many skills that targeted the dying could be launched. Of course, this also meant that the opponent's final counterattack. The 4 dragon guardians suddenly changed their tactics. Xianxia, who had been entangled in close combat, suddenly flew backward. She puffed out her chest and looked like she was about to unleash dragon breath with all her might. However, Nozdormu suddenly pounced forward and entangled Neltharion tightly. Just as Nesario was about to take the long-range attacks of the other 2 dragons and pounce forward to interrupt the red dragon's ultimate move, an accident happened. Isra, who had also been using long-range attacks, suddenly switched to a brand new dream. That dream was of his first mate, Xianxia. To be honest, because of the flames and corrosive liquid all over his body, he did not know how many female black dragons he had killed during mating. He had no feelings for his first mate. He could not accept the illusion that deeply stimulated him. Xianxia was actually destroying the dragon egg that belonged to him. No, Nesario, who was crazy about the dragon egg, paused for a moment. The 4 dragon guardians seized the opportunity and pounced forward. Chapter 6:12. Isra and Malygos suddenly engaged in close combat, which was beyond Nesario's expectations. By the time he came back to his senses, Malygos had already bitten the dragon's neck, which was a little lower than the back of his head. At the same time, Malygos' pair of front claws also bit him. Endless magical power rushed into Neltharion's neck from his neck. And near the black dragon's shoulder, Isra was ferociously gnawing at the back of the neck, a pair of claws pressing down on the wings of Deathwing, similarly infusing the power of the dream world at every point of contact. At this time, Nozdormu, who was the least afraid of death, also pounced. Anyway, this guy's body was made of sand and metal. As long as the power of time contained in the dragon's body was not lost, this guy would not die. He directly gave Nesario a warm hug, and a big mouth of sand and stone bit towards Nesario's right chest ribs. The place that was bitten directly turned into dust and dissipated. Ow 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 ow. Nesario struggled in vain. In his good right eye there was only one existence. Xianxia, the life-giver who restrained him the most. Unexpectedly, what she spat out was clearly a crimson dragon breath, but visually, it looked like she was spitting out a strange green flame. That was the color of life. The power to awaken the earth and make thousands of flowers bloom. A condescending dragon breath of life avoided Nozdormu's neck by a hair's breadth, and hit Nesario's left chest heavily. The former Earth Guardian let out the loudest wail since the start of the battle. In the next moment, his dragon blood, which was almost equivalent to super high-temperature flames, burst out from every wound on his body. Originally, this fatal blow could at least seriously injure the 2 dragon guardians behind him. However, Duque shouted, "Disperse!" at the critical moment. This allowed Isra and Malygos to escape. Nozdormu relied on his thick skin and flesh to dodge a little slower. In the end, he was shocked to find that Nesario's dragon blood had actually consumed a considerable part of his power of time. To him, this was his life. Nozdormu suddenly regretted it. Neltharion, who was covered in wounds and spewing dragon blood, plummeted from the sky. He smashed through the clouds like a comet, and crashed into the southern wall of the Rotterdam kingdom. His massive body easily shattered the sturdy wall that even the orc's strongest catapults could not destroy, as if it was a pile of building blocks. The falling black dragon instantly plowed a huge ravine that was more than 100 meters wide and more than a kilometer long on the grass between the southern city wall of Lordaeron and Lake Lordermere. The entire Rotterdam city seemed to be moaning in pain at this moment, and the southern city wall collapsed like dominoes, causing the ground to sink violently. This tremor was like a wave that spread in all directions. The buildings near the city walls let out the most violent explosion sounds before collapsing with a loud bang. This scene was many times more exaggerated than a plane crash. The falling Neltharion continued to advance southward on the wet riverbank like a raging wave. In the face of this terrifying momentum, the big tree that required two people to hug was even more fragile than a matchstick. It was easily broken and sent flying. The fallen Neltharion chewed on the mud in embarrassment while shoveling like a bulldozer from the city wall to Lake Lordermere. A huge wooden pier by the lake that could accommodate the largest battleship of the Alliance was directly smashed, and countless pieces of broken wood flew into the air. Neltharion, on the other hand, crashed into the lake. Bang! There was a thunderous sound. Neltharion's fall stirred up waves that were nearly 100 meters high. When the lake calmed down a little, the entire surface of the lake began to boil because of his ultra-high temperature, as if there was an erupting volcano at the bottom of the lake. The four dragon aspects looked at each other. The big sister, Alchemy, was extremely domineering. Drag him up and continue to kill him. Fighting in deep water had never been a wyvern's specialty. Firstly, this was not a true deep sea. Secondly, so what if the lake was more than 10 meters deep? Was the title of the King of Magic just a bluff? Malygos's eyes widened and his pair of vertical pupils suddenly turned blue. Countless mysterious magic runes poured down from top to bottom in his water tank-sized pupils. A domineering roar reverberated through the entire sky, causing the ears of everyone in Rotterdam to buzz. I declare, this is a world of ice. It was a spectacle that would be unforgettable to any witness for the rest of their lives. It was a miracle that would be sung by every bard for thousands of years. Originally, there was only a thin layer of crushed ice on the surface of the lake, but when a blue and white shock wave spread all the way to the horizon, the crushed ice turned into thick ice. The unparalleled cold penetrated straight to the bottom of the lake, and in a few breaths, all the water within a radius of several kilometers turned into ice. Explode. It was another thunderous roar from Malygos. Crackle, crackle. The lake that had turned into ice suddenly let out a violent explosion, and then all the ice fragments rose into the air in a way that defied gravity, and quickly dissipated in the terrifying winter wind. No one could believe their eyes. Lake Lordermere, which the people of Rotterdam had seen for thousands of years, was gone. In its place was a huge, white pit, and an extremely steep cliff of ice appeared where the horizon should have been. At the bottom of the pit near the original lake, a black dragon that was emitting high heat was moving with difficulty. No, it could already be included in the category of twitching before death. The four cheats, oh the four dragon aspects, flapped their wings and surrounded him again. East, south, north and west, all four directions were closely watching Neltharion. It's over. Nesario, your shameless betrayal from 10,000 years ago will finally come to an end today. The Red Dragon Queen made a declaration of victory. For my spouse and my people. Malygos was still furious. You who have been destroyed in the river of time, will become my trophy. Nosdormu announced proudly. Sleep forever, my brother, Isra said calmly. Duque interrupted. Can you kill him quickly? I'm afraid there will be changes. There can't be any changes. Malygos rudely interrupted Duque's magical transmission. Duque, who was on the balcony of Rotterdam, curled his lips. Then do it. I don't want to fight the same boss 3 times. After blabbering for a while, the four dragon aspects finally made their move. They dismembered Nesario, and immediately realized that something was wrong. The surrounding environment was in a trance. Alexstrasza saw Neltharion come back from the dead and crush her eggs. Nosdormu saw the future bronze dragons coming back to attack him and his descendants. Malygos saw the destruction of the blue dragons once again. The 3 dragon aspects woke up at the same time. Sir, what are you doing? No. It's not me. Chapter 6:13. Duque, who was watching this scene through the magic eyes, facepalmed. These silly dragons were still blinded by hatred. If it weren't for the fact that he had to vent the anger in his heart, Nesario would have mastered the lying corpse swordsmanship long ago. Although it was reasonable for antagonists to die because they talked too much from a different perspective, one had to understand that when their grudges that were deeper than the ocean and wider than the sky finally had a chance to be vented, no one would be willing to immediately kill off their opponent. Making a move first and then pretentiously reciting the eulogy was because their hatred wasn't deep enough. If you had been thinking about revenge every minute of every day for 10,000 years, you would definitely be crazier than Malaigos, and you would be even more reluctant to kill Nesario immediately. When Nesario betrayed them, Malaigos had dragged the entire Blue Dragon Legion to fight to the death. In the end, his wife was killed and a large number of dragon children and grandchildren were wiped out. No one would be able to accept such a thing. Even if Alexstrasza wanted to act quickly, she would be stopped by Malaigos. Alright, the one behind it had finally made his move. Enzos, one of the 4 great ancient gods of Azeroth. Of course, it wasn't him personally, but judging from the reactions of the 4 dragon kings, it should be the High Elven Minister who took the lead in seducing Queen Azhara 10,000 years ago, the future king of nightmares, Savis. Only he could erode the Emerald Dream controlled by Isra and turn it into the so-called Emerald Nightmare in a short period of time. Just as Savis attacked through the Emerald Nightmare, directly affecting the 3 dragon aspects and eroding Isra's Emerald Dream, Nesario, who was lying at the bottom of the lake like a corpse, suddenly moved. Like a spring that had been pressed to the extreme, it bounced back violently. A thick black lightning lit up at the bottom of the lake and shot into the sky. It looked like it was going straight for the southern sky. No, Malaigos let out the most mournful roar. It was useless. A new wave of nightmares attacked again. Even if Savis was hiding somewhere to release this move, the power of the nightmares was actually quite limited. Based on the abilities of the dragon aspects, one more wave of nightmares would at most be ineffective. All in all, it would only take 10 seconds at most. But at this juncture, the most critical 10 seconds were too fatal. It was enough to make Deathwing disappear without a trace. Would he be able to find such a good opportunity to deal with him again? Duque couldn't imagine it. However, Duque was unwilling. Weren't the 4 dragon aspects too useless? I've painstakingly schemed and even used my transmigration cheat to set up such a perfect trap, yet you can't even kill Nesario. How am I supposed to continue working with you in the future? Unwilling. Indignant. But so what? Duque's heart was filled with grievance. Aurelia painfully noticed that Duque's fingernails had dug deep into the armrest of the sofa. She knew that even though Duque looked like he was going to watch the show, Duque cared more about Deathwing's life than anyone else. She could clearly feel the faint fear in Duque's heart towards Nesario. Indeed, so what if he had that 1/5 platinum disc for warning? Deathwing's 10,000 years of notoriety was not just for show. If Nesario transformed into a human again and launched a sneak attack on Duque, who could guarantee that the 4 Dragon Kings would be able to support him in time? Even if they could save Duque, what about Duque's friends and family? What about Duque's territory? What about his subjects? Everything in the secular world was like a sand castle in front of this ferocious and unparalleled evil ancient dragon. To be honest, Duque definitely wanted Nesario to die more than anyone else. Aurelia really didn't want to see Duque, who was pretending to be relaxed, immersed in pain and fear. However, what could a mere mortal do? This wasn't something mortals could intervene in. At this moment, Duque suddenly noticed a small black dot above Nesario's forward airspace. It was a griffin. On the griffin there was a man in golden armor. He was holding the golden Bible in his left hand and doing something that he had repeated thousands of times. He was praying. His armor was very different from the armor of the Knights of Rotterdam and any other country on the continent. Its right pauldron was a huge golden wing, and its right arm under the pauldron was carrying an incomparably heavy warhammer. The griffin he was riding let out a dissatisfied cry, complaining that he was too heavy. He completed his prayer and smiled at the griffin. "Big guy, after I go down you can go back on your own. I should be dead for sure." There was no fear or uneasiness about death. There was only devotion to his faith. Along with his farewell words, the griffin seemed to feel the determination of its temporary master. It let out a low cry as if wanting him to give up on this terrible idea. However, he ignored it. Bright golden light descended from above and enveloped the entire set of heavy white armor with golden edges. Soon, regardless of whether the armor was originally white, blue or any other color, It all began to glow with golden light. He suddenly disappeared from the back of the griffin. He plummeted. His hammer, his armor, and his light merged into one, forming a dazzling golden comet. The comet was heading in the direction of Neserio's escape route. If there were no accidents, 2 rays of light, one black and one gold, would meet in midair in 3 seconds. Even though he was seriously injured, Neserio still had enough agility to avoid the paladin who jumped down from the sky to seek death. However, Neserio refused to dodge. That's right. The 4 dragon kings can chase after me, Deathwing. How dare you, a mere human, stop me, the true overlord of the sky? Neserio did not dodge. Instead, he opened his mouth and bit down. The walls of Rotterdam collapsed. At least 100,000 people in the city witnessed this scene, and almost everyone called out the name of this alliance hero. Uther. This great paladin once again showed the world his unparalleled courage. Not everyone had the courage to jump from a height of 1,000 meters. Not everyone had the courage to face the Deathwing head-on. Not everyone had the courage to face death generously. He dared to because his name was Uther. Without any suspense, the incomparably bright holy light in the eyes of humans was sent flying by Neserio. However, he bought himself 2 seconds. 2 precious seconds. But it was not enough. Aurelia was horrified to find that the person she loved the most had disappeared from her side. No one knew why Duque could teleport behind Uther in an instant. Anyway, under the watchful eyes of the entire city, a huge fist formed by arcane energy suddenly appeared. With an incomparably gorgeous right hook, it went through Neserio's blind spot and punched the black dragon's ugly face. Neserio, go. Big. Neserio felt dizzy. When he came back to his senses, the 4 dragon aspects pounced on him again. By the time he came back to his senses, the 4 dragon aspects had pounced on him again. This time no one could save Neserio. Chapter 6:14. Ever since his fall, Neserio had done countless sinister things in his life. He had been a traitor, betrayed his brothers, murdered his entire family, massacred cities with dragon breath, and killed many female black dragons. Perhaps he had thought of retribution, but he never thought that it would come from the insignificant race that he despised the most and should be erased from the entire planet, humans. To be specific, that guy was called Duke Marcus. Ever since he failed to control Duque with his dragon scales and caused the 4 dragon aspects to hunt him down, he hated Duque. While he was seriously injured and unable to fight, he tried to sneak into the upper echelons of the alliance and obtain the identity of a king. It wasn't as if he didn't have the intention to trick Duque. It was just that he really didn't think that he would be tricked instead of being tricked. If he didn't bother to dodge Uther's attack, then Duque, who suddenly jumped out of the spatial rift behind Uther, was an attack that he couldn't dodge even if he wanted to. As an ancient dragon king with rich combat experience, after he was temporarily blinded, he kept swinging his head to trade time for space so that his right eye could see more things. This indirectly reduced the blind spot of his left eye. This was a very smart approach. Even Alexstrasza couldn't completely avoid his constantly changing and omnidirectional vision, but Duque managed to do it. The gigantic fist that was formed by countless arcane blast punched over. If it was an ordinary hook, this blow would never have hit him. It should be said that even the arm of a giant couldn't hit Neserio easily. His unparalleled combat instincts allowed him to dodge any simple direct attack. However, the essence of Duque's punch was magical energy. In midair, this hook followed the movement of Neserio's dragon head, changing directions 18 times in less than a second. The fist kept blasting towards the left side of his face. This is impossible. Neserio screamed in despair in his heart. The Black Dragon King knew very well that the paladin's attack just now was harmless. However, Duque's attack was definitely different. If such a rich magical power blasted his wound, it would definitely make him dizzy and miss his last chance to escape. No, Neltharion was terrified. He was terrified. In despair, he sent out a mysterious spiritual imprint towards a certain direction in the void. It was for the ancient god Enzoth, and it contained the will of Nesario's absolute submission to Enzoth. Unfortunately, it was like a stone sinking into the sea. He immediately realized that Enzos would only attack once. If he couldn't seize this opportunity, he would be abandoned. No, it shouldn't be like this. He immediately made a second move and sent a thought to Duque. That was not an attack. After failing to control Duque the last time, he knew very well how shocking Duque's mental defense was. That was begging for mercy. No, don't hit me. All he had to do was shift his fist a little and I would be safe. I will be forever grateful to you. I can give you all the treasures I've accumulated for 10,000 years. All right, give me this first to show your sincerity. Duque quickly sent the item he wanted back as a thought. Nesario decisively gave it away. It wasn't his thing anyway. In the face of his life, everything else was fleeting. After receiving the item, Duque suddenly shouted in the spiritual world. Neltharion, you lied to me? I didn't lie to you. Time seemed to freeze. Neltharion was dumbfounded. Yes, he had lied to countless people. He had lied to his brothers, his spouse, his children, and his boss. He had lied to everything. Only this time, in order to show his sincerity, he had given him the real thing. Without giving Neltharion time to react, Duque's fist had already arrived. An incomparably gorgeous purple-blue arcane energy fist landed on Neltharion's ugly face. His face, which had already been badly mutilated by Nozdormu's hammer in his human form, was further hit by the concussive force. Even someone as strong as Neltharion felt a violent wave of dizziness. The body of the dragon, which was originally flying at high speed, turned its head backward and its body forward. It suddenly looked a little like an overturned tortoise. It was very funny. How many seconds did Duque buy for the 4 dragons? 3 seconds? Or 4 seconds? No one could tell how much it was. They only knew that it was enough. The 4 dragon aspects were ashamed of their mistakes. They focused all their attention and spirit, and as they charged forward at high speed, they did their best to resist Savi's incubus power. There was no hesitation. There was no mercy. They risked the possibility of a final backlash and fiercely pounced forward. The most violent one was naturally Malygos, whose wife and child had died. He accurately bit the place he had bitten before. At the spine that seemed to have been broken in half at the back of the head, she bit and wantonly released the power of magic. Isra and Nozdormu changed their strategy. They began to destroy Neltharion's wings with all their might. Alexstrasza, on the other hand, attacked Neltharion's chest with all her might. Finally, after more than 20 seconds, Neltharion let out the last and strongest scream of his life. Roar. In the next moment, Neltharion, the wing of death, was beheaded. After flapping his wings dozens of times, Malygos, the king of magic, flew higher into the sky. He then made a sudden descent and flew to the original south gate of Rotterdam in one breath. At this moment, hundreds of thousands of soldiers and civilians saw the huge, ugly, and hideous black dragon head on Malygos's left front claw. Did you see that? Did you see that Nesario has finally died at the hands of me, Malygos? Malygos' blood flowed with the thrill of revenge and satisfaction. This pleasure turned into thousands of bubbles that rushed to his brain, almost burning it to the point of melting. The taste of successful revenge is so sweet. In a trance, he saw that his former partner seemed to be smiling at him in that world. Malygos was so pleased that he actually had the thought to do a few somersaults in the air. Then, without looking back, he carried Neltharion's head and flapped his wings to fly further north. This guy. Alexstrasza muttered in dissatisfaction. Nozdormu cursed, bastard Malygos. He destroyed my collection. This is not a replica refined from the river of time. This is the real thing of that great traitor Neltharion. Isra laughed. Forget it. When Malygos is done venting his anger, you can ask him for it back. On the other side, Alexstrasza glanced at the sky below and muttered, this kid Duque is in the limelight. Yes. After Malygos flew away, everyone looked at the 2 people in the sky. Chapter 6:15. 30 seconds ago Uther had been sent flying. Perhaps it could be said that he had overestimated himself, but in order to carry out justice, Uther did not have the slightest bit of regret when he swooped down from the sky until he was sent flying. Holy light, if you hear my prayers, please respond to me. Please punish this most evil dragon in the world with death. As if hearing the call in his heart, Uther saw a shining blue portal as he fell from the sky. A mage? Who was so brave as to teleport in midair? Was he not afraid of not using the slow fall spell properly and falling to pieces in midair? In the next moment he saw the crazy mage. Sure enough, only he had the courage. Uther had seen many mages, but Duque was the only one who completely subverted his impression of mysterious people. Courage, fearlessness, sacrifice, justice. Those qualities that only the most devout paladin had were all seen in this young man who was supposed to be hiding in the back and safely releasing magic. Sure enough, only such a young man is the hope of the future of mankind. Wuthor looked up at the sky with his mouth wide open. When Nesario became as small as a fist in his field of vision, he saw Duke punch the black dragon's cheek with his magic power, and then the 4 dragon aspects rushed forward. Is that so? Then I have no regrets. Uther closed his eyes. This was 1,000 meters in the sky. Uther had no means to save himself. Even the Holy Shield spell could not. Because the Holy Shield spell could prevent any damage from hitting the paladin directly, but it could not offset the terrifying impact of falling from the sky. The impact of falling from 1,000 meters in the sky could not even be withstood by a dragon with the strongest body, let alone a mere mortal body. It was inevitable that he would be smashed into meat paste. 1 second. 2 seconds. 5 seconds. Uther instinctively felt that something was wrong. Was that a sound? When Uther opened his eyes again in surprise, he saw Duque, whose arms were folded and facing the ground, approaching him at a faster speed. How is this possible? Wuthor couldn't help but cry out. Of course, he didn't know what gravitational acceleration was, and he also didn't know that when a person's limbs were spread out parallel to the ground, there would be greater air resistance when falling and the falling speed would decrease. Duque was getting closer and closer. When Duque was 50 feet away from Uther, he suddenly stretched out his hand. In the next second, Wuthor felt himself being wrapped up by a strange small tornado, and the speed at which he was falling suddenly decreased. His heart had almost jumped out of his chest, but he was now floating down. Is this slow fall technique? No. This should be some kind of unknown power. No matter what, he seemed to have survived. Thank the holy light. When he heard that Uther had been saved, the first thing he shouted was thanks to the holy light. Duque almost gave up on the idea of saving him. Thank the holy light. I'm the one who saved you. Duque scolded. I thank you as well, but the fact that I'm alive is definitely the will of the holy light. Duque slapped his forehead. I'm so mad. He suddenly understood why Uther's holy light power was so off the charts. In a sense, even the strongest holy knight was suffering from a deep delusional disorder. Oh. He glanced at the distance between Uther and the dry lake bottom. There were still 20 feet. If Uther fell like this, he would probably die 70% of the time. Duque suddenly let out a very fake scream. Not good. The magic is not working. With that, he removed the storm power from Uther's body. This holy Saya, who was glowing with golden light, fell from a height of about 7 stories. Bang! The dumbfounded Uther fell to the bottom of the frozen lake with his arms and legs wide open. Oh, what a beautiful scene! The shameless Duque gloated in the air. Unexpectedly, the strongest holy knight Uther, who was known as the unkillable cockroach, got up just like that. He spat out a mouthful of blood and raised his head to look at Duke. With a serious expression he said, "Although I am very grateful for your kindness in saving my life, and I also admire your courage and commanding skills, it seems that your magic level still needs to be improved." This was not mockery. This was Uther seriously giving advice to Duque. F***ck. 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 Duque looked as if he had eaten a fly. As expected, religious zealots were all crazy. If you tried to compare intelligence with a crazy person, they would only drag your intelligence to the same level and then use their rich experience to defeat you. Damn, luckily you're not from Stormwind City. Duque admired Uther's character from the bottom of his heart. As the most noble character of an era, Uther was fully deserving of that title. But whether to be friends with him or play happily with him was another matter. Slowly descending to Uther's side, Duque finally squeezed out a smile. Let's return in triumph, Uther. Shall we go together? Okay. The big hand in the silver gauntlet shook Duque's hand tightly. Can you not use so much force when shaking hands? Sorry. It was a triumphant return. This time it was truly a triumphant return in every sense of the word. Although there were many twists and turns, and although there was a very unpleasant episode, no matter what, the fall of an evil dragon that had scourged the world for tens of thousands of years was something to be celebrated. When they saw Duque and Uther walk up from the bottom of the frozen lake and walk to the shore, the whole of Lordaeron was boiling with excitement. You guys are amazing. Well done. You are indeed true heroes. Long live the Dragon Slayer Duque. Long live the Light Envoy Uther. Who was it that deserved the cheers of hundreds of thousands of people? Who could ignore national boundaries and races and be worshipped by people all over the world? Since ancient times, there was only one kind of person who could enjoy such treatment. This kind of person was called a hero. When Nesario's acid enveloped the entire city and all the mortals were powerless to do anything, when the evil dragon that easily destroyed hundreds of meters of the city wall was about to escape, when punishing evil failed and the righteous and kind people were worried that they would be retaliated against in the future, who was it that stopped the terrifying Black Dragon King that transcended the mortal world? It was Uther. It was Duke Marcus. Some kings reigned for decades and history books might not necessarily record their names. Some heroes fought bravely for dozens of seconds, but history books were destined to have a very thick page. This was a hero. A hero who, as a mortal, had done a feat that transcended the mortal world. Sasha, who rushed out of the city, rushed up, and so did Aurelia. Servanas watched quietly from behind. She suddenly realized that it was already very difficult to find a hero as a partner like her own sisters. It was even more difficult to find a great hero who surpassed Duque as a partner. Chapter 6:16. Lordaeron City was in an uproar and cheers rose and fell like a tsunami, lasting for a long time. It was precisely because he didn't have the guts that people praised Uther's true courage. It was precisely because he couldn't do it that everyone eulogized the magnificence of Duque's magic fist. People cried and laughed as they jumped and hopped in every corner of the southern part of the city, welcoming the triumphant return of the hero with the most enthusiastic voices. That's right, the main force behind the death of the Wing of Death, Nesario, was the 4 ancient dragon aspects. However, didn't they see that if it weren't for the 2 of them, the cunning Black Dragon King would have escaped successfully? Moreover, the rule since ancient times was that those who participated in the Battle of the Dragon Slayers were qualified to be called a Dragon Slayer. Do you think it's easy to hide from the dragon's breath? The layman watched the show while the expert observed the artistry. After witnessing the earth-shattering battle between the 5 dragons, one would know how terrifying the Black Dragon King was. The bodies of the Dragon Kings were already huge enough. Their defensive power was so high that it could be said to be insane. No one had thought that a dragon aspect would be so agile in the air. It was like an elephant using its shadowless kick and tap dancing at a speed of 30 times per second in front of you. It was simply unimaginable. Even if Nesario was disabled, how strong was Duque who could effectively hit and injure Nesario? Not all the higher-ups of the alliance had personally fought alongside Duque, but at this moment, every king was moved. Especially Daelin Proudmoore, who had worked with Duque once at the Palatine Bay, but at that time he was also busy fighting against the sword sage hero of the tribe, Samuro. Under the threat of an opponent of that level, how could he have the spare time to watch Duque's battle? This time he finally saw it and he was shocked. Dai Lin secretly made a decision when he saw his beloved daughter Jaina rushing out of the sanctuary and jumping with the cheering crowd. People kept coming to greet Duque and Uther, who were returning in triumph. It was like a continuation of the triumphant return ceremony. No, it should be said that the previous triumphant return that was supposed to be a show of the Rotterdam kingdom was overshadowed by their heroic performance. It was as if their triumphant return was the real triumph. Tyrion Fordring and the others got down from the griffins. The paladins had scattered to different parts of the city to see if there were any emergencies. They welcomed Uther eagerly. Many kings came. Magni complained to Duque, "You're really not a good friend. You should have teleported me with you. Then I could have performed a real, deity descends, in front of Deathwing." Forget it. Every time I take you for a ride on the Griffin, you always say that you're busy with military affairs. Falling from the sky? It would be strange if you didn't pee. Kudrin mercilessly exposed his distant relative's lies. This is a dream. It's a dream, right? Master craftsman Jurban rubbed his chin. If it wasn't for you, Duque, Uther would have been dead. I'm considering whether to equip every Griffin Knight with a high-altitude escape device. Duque's facial muscles twitched. It had to be said that in Azeroth, where technology was rampant, there really were a lot of engineering equipment for jumping off buildings. At this time, most of the kings and representatives of the Alliance had arrived. "Where's Yung?" Lang secretly asked Salas. King Salas replied angrily, "He's still in the cave." Antonidas whispered to everyone, "Princess Kalia seems to have died. Tyrrhenas is grieving." Salas was stunned. Wasn't it Duque who saved the princess? After that, Duque handed the princess over to a group of royal guards. A few minutes later, unfortunately, the princess was hit by a ball of acid. "That's a pity." The kings all sighed softly. No one knew that the beautiful princess in their hearts had already begun her journey around the world. At this time, the crowd around Duque suddenly parted. Even Tyrrhenas wouldn't have received such treatment if he had come personally. There was only one person who could make the kings give way. Archbishop of the Holy Light, Alonso's fail. Praise the Holy Light. Looking at Uther, who was kneeling on one knee, Alonso showed a satisfied expression. Uther was indeed the disciple he admired the most. The only one who could perfectly combine the Holy Light with combat was Uther. The new profession that he had created on a whim had now become the mainstay of the Alliance. This is all the guidance of the Holy Light. Uther bowed his head deeply. Alonso walked over and stopped in front of Duque. He smiled and said, "The two of you worked together to defeat the Wing of Death, and the world was inspired. This time, in order to better spread the holy light and courage in the world, may I ask if you can give a portion of this achievement to Uther?" Duque was stunned and then smiled. "Without Uther's cover, I would not have been able to hit Nethario at all. This is only natural. Thank you for your generosity." Alonso walked towards his disciple. "The holy light gives people supreme courage. Uther, my disciple, you have used your fearless actions to prove the meaning of your existence and the holy lights. So, in order to commend your courage in front of the kings and the politicians of the Alliance, I propose to grant you the title of Emissary of Light. You can use it as your surname." Wow. This was really a stone that caused 1,000 ripples. The Archbishop of the Holy Light personally made a proposal in front of the kings. This was a very impressive thing. Several kings were so shocked that they even lost their composure. However, everyone immediately felt relieved. Not everyone had the courage to launch a suicidal charge against 200,000 orcs with just 12 riders. Not everyone had the courage to jump down from the sky and smash the seemingly weak warhammer at the Black Dragon King. What was courage? Obviously, Uther was the well-deserved embodiment of courage. Duque had proven himself countless times, and this time, Duque attacked Nethario after Uther. Although Duque's blow was more important, he was not the first to charge after all. In terms of courage, Duque was obviously a notch inferior. Therefore, there was nothing wrong with Alonso's doing this. Moreover, he still had to advertise for the Church of Holy Light. Duque was the first to shout, "Agreed." Agreed. We all agree. The Dark Portal Year 2 December 25th. On this day 2 names became sacred. One was the well-known deputy commander of the Alliance, Duke Marcus. He was recognized and allowed to be crowned with the title of Dragon Slayer. The other was Uther. After this day, he went from being an ordinary paladin from an ordinary family with no surname to Uther the Emissary of Light. Chapter 6:17. December 25th, Christmas Eve before the Transmigration and a triumphant night in this world. That night Lordaeron was very lively. Countless people were celebrating the fall of the evil dragon Deathwing, but this celebration was destined to have nothing to do with the Lordaeron royal family. A mourning flag was hung on the tallest remaining tower of the Lordaeron royal palace. The beautiful Princess Kalia Menethil had died, and not even her body was left behind. In the mourning hall the queen and Arthas cried loudly. Terenas, on the other hand, was like an old man who had one foot in the grave. He sat in the corner of the mourning hall, looking at the empty coffin and the gemstone necklace that Kalia wore in the morning. Lordaeron had suffered a double blow today. First, Kalia's death. Second, in the afternoon Gilnis, who seemed to be the most supportive of Lordaeron, suddenly announced that he was leaving the Lordaeron alliance. However, this news had not spread to the public yet. Gilnis will not associate with Lordaeron, who is in cahoots with the evil black dragon Nesario. These were Xion's words. The excuse was dignified and politically impeccable. Anyone with a discerning eye would know why. Xion was too smart. Duque's plan to build a watchtower in the Cursed Land to monitor the Dark Portal was no longer a secret. If he continued to stay in the alliance, he would no doubt have a showdown with Gilnis regarding the cost of building the watchtower. On the other hand, because it was revealed that Nesario was the Lord of Presto, and his hopes of obtaining the Hillsbrad Plains through the Dark Alliance with Terenas had been dashed, there was no point for Gilnis to continue staying in the alliance. Less than an hour after Gilnis quit, Kuel Salus also sent news that he was quitting the alliance for the same reason. If Gilnis quit because there was no profit to be made, then Kuel Salus quitting was a classic case of hypocrisy. Since the reputation of the only human kingdom that bordered the Long Song Forest was tarnished, Kuel Salus, who did not need trade or military support, did not want to pay such a high price for a castle in the southernmost part of the continent. Hence quitting was the best choice. After all, the Lordaeron alliance was originally an alliance against a common enemy, the Horde. It was a rather loose military alliance. If it was the Federation, you would be betraying them if you dared to back out. The Alliance and the Federation were different. Yesterday, if Gilnis and Kuel Salus dared to do such a thing, Terenas would have said something like, "If the Horde or other threats come again, the Alliance will not send a single soldier to save you." Unfortunately, the Rotterdam Kingdom could not even take care of themselves now. The Alliance leader of the Rotterdam Kingdom only existed in name. Duke Charmas, Terena's trusted aide, said, "Your Majesty, I think we should spread the word that you were bewitched by the wings of death." He pushed the blame onto the evilest existence, and a dead one at that. This was the most appropriate method. At the very least he could answer to the people. However, everyone knew that if it weren't for the fact that everyone in the Rotterdam Kingdom coveted Alterax's land, there wouldn't have been such a thing. The prestige of the Rotterdam Kingdom was gone. This was evident from the fact that the remaining countries of the alliance were surrounding Stormwind. What Duke Charmas did was a classic case of crisis PR, but there was no such term in this world. "Do as you see fit," Terenas said in a weak voice. "Your Majesty, please restrain your grief." Duke Charmas bowed deeply and left. In contrast to the sadness of the Rotterdam Kingdom's palace, the state guest house where Stormwind was staying was bustling with activity. The Rotterdam Kingdom was very rich. Not only could they hold the most luxurious banquets in the palace, even the state guest house that was used to entertain foreign guests still had a huge banquet hall that was more than 1,000 square meters wide. Tonight there were so many kings visiting. This made people wonder if the leader of the alliance was staying in the palace or here. On the lawn of the state guest house, the dwarven guards from the Iron Stove Fort and the dwarf griffin knights from the Eagle Nest Mountain were drinking, and the gnome mages from Gnomeregan were performing magic tricks. In the corridor outside the banquet hall of the state guest house, the Dalajan mages and the Kuel Salis mages were discussing the various possibilities of the dark portal. In the side hall, the men of the sea from Kultiras, the Highland knights from Riptide Fort, and the knights from Stormwind were chatting, drinking, arm wrestling and so on. Other than Gilness and Rotterdam, even the elves from Kuel Salis who claimed to have left the alliance could be seen here. As expected by the leaders of the alliance, they saw Countess Lucia Berov at the entrance of the state guest house, who had come to receive the guests. Dressed in a black velvet low-cut dress, Lucia was quite eye-catching. Although she was a little disappointed by the decline of her family, Lucia performed her duties as one of the two earls under Duke's command, and as his assistant. She welcomed the guests in a natural and unrestrained manner, and accompanying her was the former Duke Alex Berov. Every guest smiled knowingly. The news from Rotterdam was still that Duke Berov was a traitor of the alliance, and it would never change. At that time it was a fact that the four kings had confirmed. Right. Didn't you slander Duke Berov as a traitor of the alliance? Now I, Duke, will put the former Duke Berov in an important position in front of you. Yes, this was a slap in the face for the Rotterdam. Even if the Rotterdam was already miserable enough now. Tonight's banquet was naturally a gathering of the big shots of the alliance. Even though they did not agree on politics before, Duque still allowed Antonidas and Kale, that's to come over. Near the circle of the alliance's higher-ups, no one dared to approach more than 10 meters away. Lang was the first to speak. Duque, just tell everyone the truth. What are you going to do about the dark portal? No one has the confidence to build a huge fortress in that desolate place. Almost all the big shots of the alliance nodded. According to past experience, building such a fortress far away from human settlements would cost at least tens of millions of gold coins, and that did not include the subsequent maintenance costs. Not only would they have to transport food and military supplies through the undeveloped Redridge Mountains, they would also have to pass through the muddy Swamp of Sorrows, and finally send them to the god-forsaken cursed land. Such a supply line was enough to drive any quartermaster crazy. Duque swirled the red wine in his glass. To be honest, I don't need you to pay. I can handle all the funds myself. The kings were instantly in an uproar. Salas frowned. Then what do you want? The elite troops of the various countries. And the authorization of His Majesty Lang. Chapter 6:18. Authorization. Lang was stunned. Yes, Your Majesty, I want you to authorize me to be the Lord of Sorrows. If I succeed in controlling the Swamp of Sorrows, it will become my fief. I want to use it as a foundation to build a complex defense line that spans several regions and has strategic depth. The kings were in an uproar again. In terms of area, if Duque really had so many fiefs, even if he established an independent country, his territory alone would surpass Gilness, which was third in the alliance. He would become a human country second only to Stormwind. But everyone knew that apart from East Elwyn Forest, which was more fertile, East Twilight Forest and Redridge Mountains Lake of Tranquility were only average. As for Upwind Path and Sorrowful Swamp, they were places no one in their right mind would want to live in. The Twilight Forest was too gloomy and dark all year round. The Redridge Mountain was too barren to grow many crops. Against the Wind Path was barren after the explosion. The Swamp of Sorrow was filled with monsters. Moreover, there were many orcs who couldn't make it back to the Dark Portal in time and were trapped in the swamp. Duke wanted to use his own wealth to help the Alliance take on the task of acting as a barrier. Duque had already made a name for himself, and he could do nothing but guard his territory and be a rich man. But now he was resolutely taking on the most difficult and tiring task, For a moment the eyes of the big shots of the alliance were a little wet. Even Antonida's eyes were full of tears and his mouth moved a few times. Duque, you've worked hard. Duque shrugged. I can't help it. Lang gave me the territory closest to the dark portal. Lang wiped the corners of his eyes. Don't throw dirty water at me. Just say the word and the western wilderness, which has become 1,000 miles of fertile land, will be yours. Anduin Lothar stepped forward, his burly figure very oppressive. Yes, I'll swap places with you. I'm a warrior who only knows how to fight. It seems that only someone like me is suitable to guard the border. It would be a great waste of your abilities to put you in the blasted land. Moreover, the Alliance's main SEAL commander is me, not you. Logically speaking, you should be the one listening to me. Duque shook his head and looked at Antonidas instead. Anduin, guarding the door of darkness has never been a simple battle. What do you know about magic? How much do you know about teleportation? At this point, Duque said almost word by word, if Master Antonidas is your partner, then we will definitely be at ease. In a sense, this was forcing him to abdicate. It all depended on whether or not Antonidas was willing to sacrifice himself for the Alliance. Antonidas's old face turned green and red. It was easy for people to become stubborn when they were old. Many things were not willing to change after they had adapted. He wasn't greedy for the peace of the Dalajan, but he couldn't give up this kind of leisurely life where he could often do the experiments he liked. For him to give up his position as the Dalajan speaker and run to that barren land to guard the border, he could not bear to. Seeming to see Antonidas's embarrassment, the big shots of the Alliance were a little embarrassed. They weren't blaming the only Breaking Dawn mage of the human race. Putting themselves in his shoes, they wouldn't be willing to abandon their country to guard the border for a long time. At this awkward moment, a voice suddenly sounded. It's not good to let an old man go to the border. Why don't you let me, the Dalajan Kirin Tor, go instead? Praises. An existence whose identity, status, and ability were absolutely sufficient. To most outsiders he was just a radiant moon mage. Duke, on the other hand, was very clear about the significance of his other dragon name, Claustraz. Krasis wouldn't just casually become Duque's lackey. If there wasn't Red Dragon Queen Alexstras's instructions, Duque wouldn't believe it even if he was beaten to death. Duque smiled brightly. If it's Lord Krasis, then I can't ask for more. I've troubled you before, Ronin. I'm willing to go to repay you for taking care of the person I care about the most. Did Krasis care about Ronin the most? In this dragon's eyes, there was only his queen. Of course, Duque understood. At this moment, Noxus seemed to see hope. He came out to steal the show. Hey Duque, do you agree that Lord Krasis has the ability to guard the door of darkness? Of course. Duque still didn't know that he'd fallen into a trap. Noxus looked as if his scheme had succeeded. The beard on his face was like a blossoming flower, making him look like he deserved a beating. Alright, then Lord Krasis and I will work together to guard the blasted land. Duque's face fell. Hey, we agreed. Who told you? Lang interrupted Duque mercilessly. Moreover, if a morning star mage like you were to guard the door of darkness, wouldn't it make the tribes on the other side think that there's no one in the Alliance? Lang's words made sense. Duque had nothing to say. It wasn't just Lang. The other big shots of the Alliance nodded in unison. At this moment Aurelia, who was dressed in a blue evening gown, came over. She nimbly held onto Duque's arm. That's right, kid. You should go and practice more. You're not even a radiant moon mage, you're embarrassing me by stepping out. They watched as the high elf Aurelia taught the human kid Duque a lesson, and the two of them were lovers. The scene was as strange as it could get. For a moment the group of heartless dwarves burst out in laughter, followed by the humans. Laughing was one thing, but everyone was impressed by Duke's foresight. Duque could only give in. Alright, I'll be in charge of the construction of the Overwatch stronghold. I'll leave the defense to Anduin and Krasis, but everyone should at least send some elite troops to hold the fort, right? Duque extended 3 fingers on his right hand, his thumb gently rubbing his index and middle fingers like an unscrupulous merchant asking for money. Since Duque didn't want money, the big shots still had plenty to spare. Salas was the first to speak. The earthy highlands are completely destroyed. I can't afford to keep my Highland Knights. I'll lend them to you for the next 5 years. The Highland Knights of the Rapid Water Stronghold were publicly recognized as the fiercest in the alliance. On the surface there were only 1,000 of them, but including the followers and apprentices, there were at least 4,000 of them. Antonidas sighed. He was already at a disadvantage when he refused to go to the Overwatch stronghold. Now that he wanted to repair his relationship with the allies, he couldn't be stingy. I guarantee that there'll be at least 1.5 mages in the Overwatch stronghold all year round, but they have to be rotated. The Kurtiras aren't good at land battles, but I can give 100 cannons to the Overwatch stronghold, Dalen said. Chapter 619. General Haas slowly walked out from the crowd. The Alterac kingdom is gone. But I hope that the flag of the Eagle Knights can still be flown in the right place. That's right, the Alterac kingdom was gone. The capital of the Alterac Mountains, the Broken Ridge, was in ruins. The king was dead and there was no longer any heir with royal blood. For the sake of their reputation, Rotterdam would never allow the Barra family to continue controlling the land. So the remaining small nobles began to discuss to form a city-state that was 1 level lower than the kingdom, just like the city-state that split from the earthy highlands 2,800 years ago. Maybe after a few decades, Alterac would be promoted to a kingdom again. But Duque knew that was impossible. Instead of letting the Eagle Knights perish in the dust of history due to a loss of supplies, it was better to send them to Overwatch Castle. At least one day in the future, there might be hope for Alterac's eagle flag to return to Alterac. Duque and Anduin nodded at the same time. On the other side, the dwarves finished their discussion. The lightning tank team is yours, Magni said. Gerben, a 1,200-strong gnome engineering team. 500 Griffin Knights, Kudrin said. Due to the distance, it was impossible for the other countries to send a large number of infantry. Now everyone's eyes were on the Storm Trio. Lang and Anduin looked at each other. Stormwind will send 50,000 infantry. That includes the Griffin Legion. Duque continued. The Marcus family will arrange at least 20,000 private soldiers at the Red Ridge Mountain and the Swamp of Sorrows, forming a deep line of defense. The big shots frowned. Wasn't too few but too many. To support an army of 70,000 in such a remote place, the food and supplies needed every year was an astronomical figure. Since the start of the counterattack on the southern continent, the supplies for the 300,000 troops had almost drained every grain and copper coin from the national treasury. Most of it was given by the Rotterdam Kingdom. That was also the reason why the Rotterdam Kingdom was eager to annex Alterac to compensate for their losses. Even if they started resupplying from the East Elven Forest, the thought of having to pass through the Red Ridge Mountains, which were filled with hyenas and gnolls, the orcs hiding everywhere, and the Swamp of Sorrows, which had become incredibly dangerous due to swamp tigers, mud pond monsters, crocodiles, and other monsters with many teeth, that long and dangerous supply line was enough to make any king's skin crawl. Lang shrugged. Don't look at me. Ask Duque. It was already the limit for Tempest to send out so many people. As a king, I can't wait for every young man to participate in the rebuilding of the country. When everyone looked at Duque, Duque moved his fingers ready to demonstrate. Dai suddenly said, Wait. It's a confidential matter, shouldn't we? King Dalen's meaning was clear. Did they need to go to the map room or the meeting room? After all, even if they were separated by more than 10 meters, there were still many people listening to them. Especially for Elven Rangers, this distance was not a problem at all. Duque waved his hand casually. It's not a problem. Moreover, the invited guests are the cornerstones of the alliance. We don't need to hide what we're going to do. Every king and guest who heard Duque's words felt warm in their hearts. What was generosity? That was generosity. It was hard to imagine that Duque was only 17 years old. Heroes came forth in a chaotic world. That was true. A hero who could gather the power of 11 countries and 3 major races to fight against foreign enemies in such a chaotic situation was not just for show. In everyone's heart they secretly wrote the word respect for Duque. Duque raised his glass high. For the true alliance. For the safety of Azeroth. He was making a toast. For the true alliance. For the safety of Azeroth. Everyone raised their glasses and drained it in one gulp. In the next moment, Duque took the wine bottle from Alicia's hands. He didn't pour the wine into his glass but into the air. The wine floated in the air with the support of arcane energy. Under the shocked gazes of all the kings, it actually turned into a sand table that moved up and down according to the terrain. Everyone saw the Elven Forest, the Reedridge Mountains, the Swamp of Sorrows and the Cursed Land. Then a golden belt set off from Stormwind City, passing through 4 regions and arriving at the highlands northeast of the Cursed Land where the Griffin Legion was currently camped. This is... Salas muttered to himself. Then with a point of Duque's finger, a part of the belt quickly enlarged, becoming a model the size of a water tank in front of the kings. At first glance it looked like a huge metal lump, a little like the steam tanks of the dwarves. Magni thought of something but he wasn't sure. Duque's deep voice confirmed Magni's guess. Technology has changed the world. The steam tanks that the dwarves of Ironstove Castle like to use have greatly inspired me. What if I use steam tanks to transport people and supplies? Hey, I'm not bragging but a tank can carry at least 5 carriages of people or goods, Noxus said, trying to provoke Magni. Don't say I didn't remind everyone the dwarves have a very high chance of collapsing. I've seen many steam tanks stop halfway and rely on the dwarven infantry to push them from behind. In an instant Magni's face turned red and green and everyone burst into laughter. But Duque waved his hand. That's because the terrain is too bad. The current steam tanks aren't suitable for all terrain, and can only be used on plains with solid soil. That's what I said. As long as the babies of Ironstove Castle can go to that damned red soil, we're invincible. The dwarves really knew how to brag. The Dwarven King was even better. Then what do you mean? Lang was also curious. Train. A vehicle that uses a modified dwarven steam engine and walks on a fixed track. It can transport at least 2,000 fully armed soldiers or 100 tons of supplies at once. That's what I want to tell everyone. Is that even possible? Salas was dumbfounded. 2,800 years ago, you told Thoradin the Great that there would be a huge ark that was 150 yards long that could carry 300 people. Do you think Thoradin the Great would believe it? Dai Lin smiled at Duque's retort. That's right. That's the progress of the times and the power of technology. Duque continued. If I can let the Lightning Army annihilate so many orcs, I can build an experimental railway for everyone to see in the middle of next year. Railway? Magni asked in surprise. Yes. Place parallel rectangles of wood on muddy and insufficiently sturdy areas, and then place 2 steel tracks on top of them to ensure the route of the steam engine. Although it loses its flexibility, it can ensure speed and safety, and reduce the vibration of the steam engine. Chapter 620. Just how many technologies were needed to evolve from the early steam engine era to the era where steam locomotives were widely used? How many black technologies were needed? Duque did not count. But as an engineering student and one who majored in building environment and equipment engineering at that, he had enough knowledge to overcome all of this. Damn it, why did he have to learn about the environment? He had no environmental knowledge at all and he wanted to learn thermodynamics and boilers? learning about boilers and having a terrifyingly expressionless tutor with a terrifying aura. On the first day of class, he threw a poor bastard who was playing with his new iPhone out of the 4th floor. This made Duque, who had skipped classes 3 days before his transmigration, go to school obediently like a grandson. Alright, studying hard will always pay off. Duke rambled on and on about his ideas for the train, as well as the key elements to pay attention to. The 3 dwarven kings all looked like they were his disciples, especially Magni and Gerben, who were taking notes in their notebooks. Although Eagle Nest Mountain always used griffins, which seemed unrelated to this, the dwarves' fascination with black technology was almost ingrained in their bones. The other kings did not understand at all, but this did not stop them from showing an expression that said they did not understand but thought it was awesome. It did not matter if they did not understand as long as they felt that it would work. Dalen, what do you think? Salas asked softly. You don't say. I've never seen Duque unreliable when he does things. Dalen's evaluation was quite high. Antonidas decided to stop Duque first. Alright, next question. We all think that you can build this railway to Redridge Mountain without a problem. What about the Swamp of Sorrows? You can solve the technical problems for now, but what about the threat in the swamp? Our people lost a lot of people when they crossed the swamp. What about the manpower to build the railway? Duque snapped his fingers and Gavin Rad, who was guarding the side hall door, immediately understood and opened the door. Not just the kings but all the guests were extremely surprised. Because there were 2 Nagas and a strange Murloc standing at the door, wearing leather armor with the emblem of Stormwind. Everyone knew that there were Naga and Murlocs in Stormwind. Everyone had always thought that they were a lowly race that couldn't be shown in public, even though they had always been part of Stormwind's establishment. No one had ever thought that Duque would formally introduce them in such an occasion. Let me introduce to everyone, this is the Murloc Prophet Maugre, the Furious Scale Naga Priest Vara, and the Spiky Spine Naga Priest Syphilis. It had been a long time since Vara had attended an important occasion. After the battle at the Ocean View Cliff to annihilate the main force of the Blackstone clan, she almost thought that she had lost her value and was forgotten by Duque. She didn't expect Duque to introduce her to the higher-ups of the Alliance. This was undoubtedly a promotion of status and recognition. Respected kings, Vara Furin Avis pays his respects to you. Vara and Syphilis folded their arms and bowed to the kings. The kings nodded in return. Even if it was inconspicuous, it was still an indescribable respect. The 3 leaders of the other races were so touched that they trembled. Duque continued his introduction. I will use a portal to send the Naga troops and a portion of the elite Murlocs into the Swamp of Sorrows. At that time, the construction of the railway in the Redridge Mountain region will be handled by the newly captured Orc captives. And the Swamp of Sorrows will be helped by the Murlocs and male Naga. After discussing with Gerben, Magni said, we believe that the technology provided by Duque will have a revolutionary effect on our mining skills and mineral transportation. In return, we bronze-beard dwarves and pygmies will unconditionally provide the iron ingots and workers needed to build the railway. The kings were in an uproar when they heard this. No one had expected that Duque's new technology would allow the dwarves to give away iron and manpower without risking anything. This was practically a free transportation lifeline. Everyone broke into a heated discussion. Wasn't Duque's move too beautiful? He said he would take care of everything, but in the end he didn't even have to spend a single copper. Were the bronzebeard dwarves fools? Of course not. Didn't they see how the Iron Furnace Castle dwarves wouldn't act until they saw the rabbit? After hundreds of years of dealing with the dwarves, everyone knew that they were unexpectedly shrewd under their boorish appearance. They would never lie, but they would never let themselves be cheated. Duque's technology definitely had the key to their dreams, which was why they were willing to pay so much. Lang nudged Andoin with his elbow and smiled. See, I told you to put Duque in the overall situation. That's where he can really make use of his abilities. Andoin replied with a smile. Do you still remember that year when Stormwind City almost suffered a famine? Yes. If we could transport the food from East Elven to Stormwind City that year, there wouldn't be so much trouble. Yes. The wheat rotted halfway through the journey. The people of this era didn't have much concept of logistics. But that didn't stop the far-sighted kings from seeing the benefits of high-speed logistics. The construction of the railway can also stimulate the upgrading of iron furnace castles' production techniques, Duque said. For example, I can have Iron Furnace Castle make a set of building molds and mass-produce them, cutting the time needed to build a house by half. Duque answered the king's questions with a smile, and every answer was very satisfying. He was also very confident in this plan. Didn't they see how the country had been working on the One Belt, One Road before he transmigrated? Didn't they see how the country's logistics industry flourished after the spread of high-speed rail, driving the economies of various regions? As long as this plan succeeded, it wouldn't just be a military hub, it would also be a complete economic lifeline. That's right, every country suffered greatly after the war and needed to be rebuilt. Duque's method was undoubtedly a form of work in lieu of relief. With the construction of the railway, more food and specialties could be transported out from the depths of the forest, either to be used as supplies to the Cursed Lands or to be shipped out of Stormwind Port to be sold to the various kingdoms in the northern continent. Duque's unique post-war economy had undoubtedly given the countries that lacked money and silver a new way to stimulate their economies. In just one night, Duque had made everyone forget about the leader of Rotterdam. That's right. Without the help of the once wealthy Rotterdam Kingdom, the remaining 8 countries of the alliance had already found a new way to resist foreign enemies and revitalize the economy after the war, excluding the Rotterdam Kingdom, Quell, Thalos, and Gilnes. Chapter 621. Late at night. No matter how grand and noisy the banquet was, it would eventually come to an end. Although every king wanted to sit down and chat with Duque, everyone knew that Duque was exhausted. That night, those bastard kings had forced Duque to drink a lot. When they walked out of the banquet hall and reached the corridor, blurg, blurg. Apart from Antonidas and Kale, there were a total of 6 kings and 2 commanders of the alliance. These 8 super big shots in the alliance could make the mainland tremble just by moving their legs. They lined up in a row from tall to short. Everyone bent down, stretched out their hands to support a tree and kept spitting at the roots. The 8 big shots of the alliance vomited together. It was a spectacular scene. Every noble who saw this had a tragic expression on their faces. They really wanted to say that they didn't know these guys who ruined the image of the nobles. It wouldn't matter if they were other kings, but this was the dark history of the 8 big shots of the alliance, including their boss. Whoever dared to expose them would die. No one would dare to bury them even if they died. He also vomited on Aurelia, who had come over to support him, all over her dress. Aurelia was so angry that she almost went crazy. You can hug the tree to sleep tonight. With that, he left angrily. Under normal circumstances, Sasha, who had recently awakened her wife-like personality, would never abandon Duque. Unfortunately, Duque vomited on trees. Sasha said in a low voice with a regretful tone, "The trees will die if you do this." Well, the trees could be watered, but it would be tragic if they got vomit with high levels of alcohol. Duque suddenly understood why bars that mainly sold alcohol didn't have any indoor plants. It turned out that the drunkards had vomited to death one after another, so much so that the owner had given up on treatment. Duque was very sad. Tears welled up in his eyes. Wasn't it supposed to be a 1v2 to celebrate their victory? Both of them had run away. What was there to vie for? With great difficulty, the big shots of the alliance of drunkards finally left with the help of their assistants. This was not the end. Just as Duque returned to his room exhausted, Gavin Rad suddenly came up to him and said, "Sorry, there's a big shot waiting for you inside." The strange expression on the Holy Knight's face immediately let Duque know who was inside. "Open the door. Goo goo goo. It's delicious." Her beautiful face, towering breasts, elastic waist, white thighs and sleepy half-drunk eyes were all enough to make a male who didn't know anything go crazy. Duque said decisively, "I'm sorry, I've gone the wrong way." He turned around and closed the door. What a joke. This fellow was drunk again. A drunk red dragon queen was not to be trifled with. At this time there were no threatening words coming from the room, but a magnetic female voice floated out. "Is that so? It was a waste of my effort to deliver the prize for killing Nisario. Don't loot the boss. This was a crime. This was sin. Even if you are a black hand. Even if you are black to the end. Even if you have to loot the corpse." Duque decisively opened the door again, rubbed his hands and put on a flattering smile. "Oh, it's our most beautiful Queen Alexstrasza. Sorry, you're too beautiful. I thought you were a princess who climbed into my bed. Sorry, there's a lot of gossip when you're popular." Alexstrasza was lying on her side, her right hand supporting her head as she lay on Duque's bed. She revealed a playful expression. "Is that so? Of course. May I ask, what prize do I get this time?" Duque pricked up his ears. Her Majesty the Queen took a sip of the red wine. She must have done it on purpose. The scarlet wine flowed down her sharp chin. It flowed down her beautiful swan-like neck, past her delicate collarbone, and finally into the deep dragon valley. Gulp. The immoral Duque swallowed his saliva. Alexstrasza deliberately teased Duque. "The prize is me." A cold wind blew past and Duque sobered up. He said righteously, "Sorry, I don't want to die yet." After saying that, he turned around and wanted to leave. But this time he couldn't leave even if he wanted to. The door in front of them was suddenly engulfed in extremely hot flames. If he really wanted to go out, he would be like a moth flying into a flame. As Duque gritted his teeth, he suddenly found a pair of soft but not lacking in strength and beauty had wrapped around his neck from behind. The extremely elastic and oppressive long jifeng was already pressing against his back. Duque felt as if he had been petrified. His whole body was stiff and he didn't dare to move. Damn, the drunk red dragon queen was not to be trifled with. Alexstrasza blew into Duque's ear like orchids. Oh no, like wine. It made all the hairs on Duque's body stand on end. Sensing Duque's reaction, the queen didn't seem to be as drunk as last time. How boring. It's rare to kill that traitor Nisario, so I want to celebrate with you. I'm not in the mood now. Alexstrasza dodged from behind Duque and jumped onto Duque's velvet mattress. She rolled around contentedly and finally made a somewhat indecent pose. Duque didn't dare to pounce on her because the queen was basically awake. If he dared to cross the line, she would probably send him a dragon breath. All right. I'm here today to give you my spoils of war." After saying that, Alexstrasza raised her hand, and a lot of mysterious and gorgeous equipment appeared beside Duque's bed. Duque noticed that there was at least one staff. Duque was so excited that he couldn't believe his eyes. The staff had a mysterious blue color as its core, and the top of the staff was like an overlapping V. The entire staff gave off the feeling that it was made of lava that was fished out from the depths of the earth. At the core of the staff was a mysterious blue-black lava ball that was constantly rotating. In Duque's memory, there was only one staff that matched such a strange shape, tied a hack step of time. Duque pounced on it excitedly and picked up the staff. Almost at the instant his palm touched the staff, Duque felt that the magic circuit in his body had more than doubled in speed. The biggest selling point of this staff was the addition of haste. Not only the owner but even the magicians around him could enjoy it at the same time. If he wanted to set off a magic storm, choosing this staff was definitely the right choice. This. Duque was so excited that he almost lost the ability to speak. Look at how happy you are. You're so useless. Come to me and Maligos later. We each have a prize for you. Actually, Isra has a prize for you too, but she's busy dealing with the evil corruption in the Emerald Dream. The only despicable one is Nozdormu. He actually said that letting you off for your crimes is the biggest prize. Chapter 622. Prizes? There are other prizes? Duque was so happy that his heart was about to fly out of his chest. Of course, the most important thing was Nosdorm's attitude. Alexstrasza did not understand, but how could Duque not understand? Nosdorm had taken the blame for him, a transmigrator, willfully changing the course of history. The biggest and most crucial factor was naturally Neltharion's life. 10,000 years ago, the 5 companions who had agreed to be on equal footing had been reduced to dust because of Neltharion's betrayal. The blue dragons, whose entire race had been wiped out, had suffered the most, but the other 3 could no longer play happily. Who knew where Malygos had gone with Neltharion's head, but it was certain that the remaining body of a certain black dragon king had been handled by Nosdorm. That 10,000-year-old grudge. That was a huge favor. Duke heaved a sigh of relief. After the thing he was most worried about disappeared, Duque turned to look at Alexstrasza. That prize. The queen snorted and leaned against the headboard. She crossed her arms in front of her chest, making the pair of peaks seem to rise a few inches above sea level. She crossed her legs comfortably and swung her little feet. The bright red nails on her toes were very eye-catching even in the dark. The promised tree of life will not be less. But the real prize will only be officially given to you in front of the 4 major dragon clans after you arrive at the Dragon's Rest Temple. Oh, the Dragon's Rest Temple is the holy land of our dragon clan. This place was established at the beginning of the birth of Azeroth. The queen snapped her fingers and a fiery red light quickly flew over and disappeared between her eyebrows. Duque was slightly stunned. This was the spatial coordinates of the Dragon's Rest Temple located on the northern ice continent of the world of Azeroth. With it he could directly open the teleportation door and go there. The coordinates of Northrend? I seem to be able to do something. While Duque was thinking, the queen continued to speak. I wanted you to come directly. However, I discussed it with the other dragons. The fall of Nesario is such a huge matter that we can't just end it like that. After Malygos has vented his anger, the 4 dragons will hold a solemn ceremony to nail Nesario's head to the temple. This is not only a declaration to the entire world, but also a warning to all the dragons with the fate of the traitors. Never abandon your duty and never forget your original intentions. Duque sighed. It had been hard on these adorable dragon aspects for more than 20,000 years. Even though 4 of the 5 great dragon kings had tragically fallen in the original history, the more Duque integrated into this world, the more he felt that these dragon aspects had not had it easy. Alexstrasza did a carp flip and bounced up. She walked to the balcony and casually flipped her fiery red hair. The moonlight shone on her shoulder-length red hair, making people feel as if she was bathing in flames. Yo, you must be tired tonight. I'll be leaving first. Wait. Duque suddenly said. Can you tell me what your prize is? This makes my heart itch. Duque also knew that asking what the prize was in advance would make him less expectant, but he was itching to know. Pfft. Alexstrasza smiled brightly. Do you really want to know? Alright then, beg me. Duque bared his teeth. Damn it, do you think it's easy for me? Not only did I rescue you but I also helped you get rid of your nemesis, Nesario. I was so ruthless that I didn't even care if there would be a cataclysm in the future. Are you still King kidding me? Duque put on a serious face, put his hands behind his back and looked up. There was only the moonlight in his eyes. Who knew that Alexstrasza, the enthusiastic and familiar person, would come over and hug Duque? Her fiery red lips parted slightly, and she blew hot air on Duque's earlobe with a hint of alcohol. I hate tragedies the most. Seeing 2 beautiful elven girls with a lifespan of thousands of years have to have a passionate but short-lived love with a short-lived human who only has a lifespan of 100 years makes me very unhappy. Duque's heart suddenly jumped. His heartbeat was so intense that he didn't even notice that he had stopped breathing. Suddenly, Alexstrasza let go of Duque and did a gorgeous 360-degree turn in front of Duque. Her left hand was on her waist. She raised her right hand and her elbow was level with her lower abdomen. Her jade-like hand formed a beautiful arc, and her slender jade-like finger pointed at her collarbone above her right chest. There was an indescribable arrogance and coldness in the queen's expression. Who do you think I am? I am the life-giver, Alexstrasza. Hiss, Duque finally remembered to breathe. He took a deep breath of cold air. He wanted to calm himself down and listen to the next announcement from the queen. The queen proudly raised her right hand. Her beautiful face that was surrounded by fiery red showed an expression that wasn't a smile. Suddenly, a green ball of light shot out from her fingertip and sank into Duque's chest. It's a pity that such an interesting human like you is bound by the limited physiological limits of a human. As a reward for saving me from imprisonment, I, the Red Dragon Queen Alexstrasza, hereby declare to the world of Azeroth that I will grant Duke Marcus eternal youth. As long as you are alive, your body will remain at its strongest state when you are 18 years old. Unless your head is cut off, even if you suffer a fatal injury in the eyes of ordinary people, the life energy I will grant you will slowly spread and heal all forms of your injuries. Eternal youth? Unlimited recovery? Originally, this reward was enough to make Duque ecstatic. There was an even bigger surprise to come. I declare, the Guardian of Time Nozdormu grants eternal life to Duque. Until the destruction of the world of Azeroth, or the destruction of the Dragon Slumber Temple. Not only you, Nozdormu will also grant you 7 spots of eternal life. You can choose to give them to your family, loved ones, friends, or anyone else that you think is suitable. Oh yes. Duque was really excited. It wasn't that he didn't think of getting benefits from Alexstrasza, but he really didn't think that he would have eternal life one day. And not only him but 7 of his loved ones could also benefit. Duque was so happy that he was going crazy. This is real. Why would I lie to you? I was the one who got Nozdormu's spots of eternal life. It's not like that thing is immortal. You and your 7 loved ones just won't get sick and won't age, but you will still die if your head explodes. Back then, Nozdormu gave the Guardian of the World tree, the night elves in your mouth, the same reward. I just added a life recovery for you. The queen's subtext was that Nozdormu could give the entire night elves eternal life without a problem. It wouldn't matter if there were more of them. But wait, this is just the reward for saving me. Doesn't that mean there's also the reward for killing Nesario? Chapter 623. The Queen's eyes sparkled. Of course, we dragons clearly distinguish between gratitude and grudges. Saving me is one thing, helping the dragons to ambush and kill Nesario is another. The reward is, of course, points. Yes. Alexstrasza emphasized each word with a pause. It was a different kind of charm. Duque was overjoyed. Saving the queen was already the reward of eternal life. How rich would the reward of killing the traitor of the dragons, Deathwing, be? If it were not for his image, Duque would definitely be drooling. Seeing that Duque looked like he was about to pounce on her and kiss her, Alexstrasza pretended to be disgusted. Just now when I wanted to be intimate with you, you looked like you were unwilling. Now you still want to come over? No way. With a wave of his hand, Duque flew out like he was riding on a cloud and fell to the ground in a daze. This was obviously the result of the queen deliberately holding back. Your Majesty, is it necessary for you to be so petty? Duque said bitterly. I like it. Fight me if you're unhappy. Her Majesty proudly puffed out her chest and sucked in her stomach. Her right hand suddenly released a super hot fireball, looking like she was going to fight him if he had the guts. Looking at the queen's proud breasts, Duque shamelessly raised his hands as though he was surrendering. Good. You have big breasts, you win. Where's the courage to punch Nesario in the face? The queen still looked unforgiving. You're not the enemy. If I really beat you up, my benefits will be gone. At least you know what's good for you. When Malygos gets tired of playing with Nethario's head, we'll let you know. With that, the queen turned around and flew away in a flash of red lightning. Phew, is it true that all strong women have a bad temper? I'm so tired. After sending off the Red Dragon Queen, his mind, which had finally sobered up, became a little dizzy again due to the alcohol. Duque threw himself on the bed and sniffed the body fragrance left behind by the queen as well as the firebird. Roar. This was a direct attack from the heart. I'll wipe. Duque was so scared that he bounced up from the bed. Ha ha ha. A certain evil dragon queen's laughter came from afar. This time she really left. F***CKU. Do you want me to live? In the system's detection, Duque's bed was determined to be Alexstrasza's trap, 24 hours. Duque's eyelids twitched. A wave of drunkenness hit him again, and his eyelids changed from twitching to fighting mode. Duque was too lazy to go out and change rooms, so he casually threw himself on the recliner and fell asleep. In his daze he felt as if someone was caressing his body. The familiar footsteps, the familiar smell. Duque's dizzy head couldn't tell who it was, but he was sure that it was someone beside him. It was a very natural sense of security. Was it when Lysa? In his haze, he felt as if the other party had covered him with a blanket. Duque grabbed her and pulled her into his arms. The familiar fragrance of her hair. It was a very comfortable feeling. When Lysa seemed to be blaming him for vomiting a tree to death and refusing to come over. However, Duque had a trick up his sleeve. Darling, don't let me sleep alone on the night of triumph. Without much awareness, Duque just turned his body sideways and hugged the beauty in his arms like an otaku hugging a pillow. Sasha was indeed a wife type. She immediately gave up struggling. The perfect temperature gave Duque a very comfortable feeling. Huff, huff, huff. Duque slept like a log. In his dream, Duque lived a happy life. He became the king of children. He beat up the Undercity kindergarten and trampled over the Thunder Cliff preschool. With a set of Olo Layla, Duque was invincible in the world. Then he killed his way to the Dragon Slumber Temple and beat up Alexstrasza, who dared to provoke him. He took a horse stance and punched left and right. The dragon lady who pissed off me, Duque, is in danger. With a few punches, Duque made the Red Dragon Queen flee. When she fled, Duque chased after her. When he caught up, he would, of course, execute her on the spot. Isn't it just Dragon Peak? I rub, I pinch. Wait, something doesn't seem right? The size is close, but it's so soft. This isn't the dumpling that a well-trained body should have. Duque sobered up. In the darkness he suddenly realized that he was hugging a female body. But it wasn't Aurelia's golden hair that shone even in the dark, nor was it when Lysa's bright silver. Instead it was long black hair. There was only one person around Duque who had such hair. Duque finally couldn't help but exclaim. There was a trace of horror on his face. Alicia. It was a gentle murmur. In the dark room, with the faint light from the magic lamps that seeped in from outside the guest house, a faint blush could be seen on the side of the girl's face. There were 2 drops of tears at the corner of her eyes, either from pain or panic. However, it was only at this moment that Duque realized that his magician's hand had already firmly grasped the fake Dragon Peak in his dream. Then he didn't know when, but he had hit her with 3 armor-piercing attacks. The girl's misty eyes seemed to regain some clarity. Alicia suddenly smiled. Please don't blame yourself. It's my honor. A soft right hand gently stroked Duque's face and then pressed the back of Duque's head. Even though she had her back to Duque, she tried to stretch her neck toward Duque's lips. Her delicate red lips were getting closer and closer. Duque could already feel the other party's orchid breath. Duque tried to resist. Isn't this a little inappropriate? The frail figure of the Bear family's eldest daughter contained an unexpected persistence. Her slightly sad eyes made people feel like they couldn't help but want to protect her. Her weak voice contained some kind of passion. It has nothing to do with power or status. This is just the admiration of a slave of fate towards a strong person who can control his fate. You can choose not to love me, but you can't stop me from liking you and admiring you. After saying that, Lucia slowly offered her red lips to him. With a fanatical attitude, like a fanatic offering herself to the god in her heart, she offered her lips, or perhaps everything she had. Duque actually hoped that at this moment, the moral integrity he inherited from the Mediv family was still there. Then he could openly throw out a holy radiance, display his moral integrity and reject it. Unfortunately, there were no ifs. He had lost his moral integrity for a long time. Chapter 624. Or rather, deep down in Duque's heart he felt that this was the most natural outcome. For lips pressed against each other. It was unimaginable that Lucia, who had always felt weak, would take the initiative to attack. Her snake-like little tongue wantonly attacked in Duque's mouth. After a long time their lips parted. To Duque's surprise, when Duque was about to counterattack, Lucia suddenly broke free. She seemed to want to generously show off her proud figure, but in the end she shyly tidied up her clothes. Looking at the dumbfounded Duque, Lucia leaned over and gently kissed Duque's forehead like a chick pecking rice. I'm sorry. Although I really want to give everything to you tonight, today is the Alliance's victory day, the victory day of my hero Duke Marcus. Everything should be perfect for you today. I know Sister Aurelia. She is very proud, but in the face of her love for you she can let go of her pride. Sister Sasha is the same. She may be sad that you vomited a tree to death, but she will definitely come. It's not good to let a little admirer like me disturb the perfection of this sacred day. Duke suddenly felt a burst of warmth that seeped into his heart. He knew what Lucia was thinking. This once noble young lady who had now fallen from grace, had completely positioned herself in the role of a lover. Perhaps she felt that she owed him too much. Or perhaps she felt that she was not worthy of him. Duque did not know if his parents gave her unnecessary pressure, but he could clearly feel that this gentle and sensitive woman was actually a little woman who longed for love and the nourishment of family. Duque rubbed his head, stood up and stepped forward to reach out his hand. Lucia took a step back as if she was frightened. She whispered weakly, I can't. Not today. Duque did not care. He reached out again and Lucia retreated again. This time, Duque directly flashed and hugged Lucia from behind. Idiot, do you think you won't be discovered if you leave now? Maybe this is a beautiful mistake, but I think we should talk about it, right, Aurelia? Windsor? Trying to have a secret affair under the eyes of two ranger heroes who were the best at tracking was just courting death. To be honest, Duque did not know how to face Lucia, who had suddenly barged into his emotional world. As a transmigrator with no moral integrity, he did have a magnificent dream of a harem, but in reality he did not know how to deal with this kind of thing. In terms of war, he was the strongest king. When it came to relationships, he was all-mouthy king. That's right, he was indeed someone who loved to fantasize. He couldn't wait to dominate all the beauties in the world and become the only male lead in a 10-terabyte romantic action movie. But deep down he was just an inexperienced engineering student in the field of love. He could predict that the Windrunner sisters must be nearby and would eavesdrop. The funny thing was, after calling his lovers over with great generosity, looking at the two well-dressed lovers with bitter expressions on their faces, Duque became at a loss. Actually... At first, Duque stuttered a little, but when he felt the beautiful girl in his arms tremble and realized that Lucia was going to apologize to the Windrunner sisters to make him feel better, Duque suddenly hugged Lucia even more tightly. Lucia is so pitiful like this. Anyway, I'm a bastard for making you sad. I'm also a big bastard for making Lucia sad. Then I'll simply announce that I want to have a harem and take her in as well. What about it? Duque said resolutely. Silence. Dead silence. Dead silence. The air was simply frozen. Alicia could not believe her ears. She had thought of countless possibilities such as becoming Duque's secret lover, or being firmly rejected and so on. She just did not think that Duque would directly lay his cards on the table with Aurelia. She opened her mouth wide. This was the most taboo thing in ladylike etiquette, but she really could not control herself. At this moment 2 lines of tears trickled down her cheeks. No thank you, Sir Marcus, there's really no need for that. I don't want to ruin your relationship with the 2 Windrunner ladies. Alicia could not go on. Aurelia put her left hand on her waist and stopped Sasha, who was about to speak, with her right hand. I understand what Alicia means. What is your real thought? I'm sorry, before this I really did not feel Alicia's feelings for me. But I am such a person. If it was someone I'm not familiar with, I could make a very rational decision even if he died 1,000 times and give it a very grand reason. But, as for the people around me, no matter what, I hope that they can live well and live happily. If I want a few people to obtain extreme happiness, but have to sacrifice the happiness of others around me, I would rather everyone live ordinary lives. When Duque spoke his thoughts in rapid succession, Aurelia suddenly revealed a bright smile. Alright, Duque, don't think of me as a selfish and possessive woman. From the moment I decided to be with you, I made a decision: human life is too short. In order not to let you have any regrets during the time we spend together, I will hope that you can be happy every day. Sasha was finally able to speak. Yes. We sisters have long decided. Even if you want to marry a noble lady according to human aristocratic etiquette, we can accept it. Anyway, as long as you treat us sincerely, we will stay. If you really don't love us anymore, we will naturally leave. Aurelia walked in front of Duque and Alicia, took a deep breath and said in the most solemn tone, as long as it's a good girl that you like, we don't mind sharing with her. But I'll say it again, if you break our hearts, we'll leave on our own. We swore in the name of the sun, well, Sasha added. No matter what. Be it Alicia, Kalia, or anyone else in the future, Aurelia emphasized. Duque felt bitter. He suddenly understood why. It turned out that the sisters thought of him as a terminal patient. A short life was a terminal illness for humans. A lifespan of less than 100 years was too short for high elves, who could easily live up to tens of thousands of years. Hence, the sisters were willing to make the biggest concession. But Duque became hesitant. Really, no matter what? Yes, no matter what. The 2 sisters stepped forward and said in unison. I wanted to say that because I helped the dragons kill Nasario, Nozdormu gave me a few spots of eternal life. Aurelia. Sasha. A few seconds later. You big bastard. Boo. Chapter 625. The Windrunner sisters quickly exchanged opinions in the whisper of the wind. Sis, it looks like we've been tricked. Sasha shrunk back and forth. I should have watched him to death. Aurelia gritted her teeth. Are we going back on our word? No. We're hailed as the heroines of the Alliance. It's too lame to go back on our word over such a small matter. Plus, little Alicia is a good girl. Then, it's not that we can't stop this kid from having a harem, but he needs to be capable. With that small body of his. Hee. Aurelia smiled proudly. Yes, that's it. In the latter half of the night, there was indeed nothing left for Alicia to do. The shy Alicia practically ran away in defeat. This was the story of the battle between Duque and the Windrunner sisters. When a mage was forced to use melee combat instead of magic, victory was assured. It should be so. That night, the Windrunner sisters went all out. The noble and elegant big sister turned into the wildest cheetah, pouncing on her prey. The gentle third sister turned into the most torturous vixen, clinging to her prey. Unknowingly, many positions were unlocked. Even though Duque was defeated again and again. But, after 3 rounds, Sasha was the first to be defeated. This is impossible. Aurelia was unconvinced. Once again she KO'd Duque. But the 7th round passed. Aurelia could not hold on any longer. With a long scream and slight twitching of her body, she was defeated. Aurelia refused to admit defeat and pulled her sister to attack Duque. Another 5 rounds passed. Whether the proud Aurelia was willing to admit it or not, she and her sister had indeed lost. Defeated by the evil Duque's godly sword. 2 pairs of misty but clear eyes revealed love. There was no hatred, only a little unwillingness. This was illogical. How did Duque's battle power break through the sky in just a few days? The sky was already beginning to brighten. In the cool morning breeze, Duque put on his nightgown and walked to the balcony. He gazed into the distance and stared at the Azeroth sky. The light of dawn shone on the Azeroth hero who was standing with his hands behind his back, reflecting a gentle radiance. For a moment he had the illusion that Duque was like a god bathed in the morning light. Recalling how Duque had led the alliance to save their hometown, defeated the seemingly invincible tribe, and planned to kill the legendary dragon of evil Nesario, the Windrunner sisters huddled together and looked at Duque's stalwart back. They suddenly felt a sense of intoxication. So it was this kind of man who conquered us sisters. Aurelia suddenly sighed. Yes. Sigh, let him do as he pleases in the future. Yes. Just like when they were young, Sasha intimately rubbed her sister's face with her face. Hey big sister, it would be great if second sister was willing to join us. After a moment of silence, Aurelia shook her head. She's a rebellious little girl. She won't. Can't I just fantasize about it? On the other side, Duque was bathed in the morning light. Beneath his seemingly righteous face, he was actually thinking about some very terrible things. Speaking of which, if Nostorm knew that his eternal power was used by me as a breakthrough point to start a harem, if Alexstrasza knew that the life force she just gave me was used as fuel to replenish the combat power of Duque's divine sword, would I be beaten to death 999 times? Duque raised his chin and looked at the sky at a 45-degree angle. 2 invisible crocodile tears flowed out of his eyes. What's mine is mine. No one can take it away. October 26th. King Terenas could not care less about the grief of his beloved daughter's death. He hurriedly called for another throne meeting. The throne room was gone. The meeting was held in the still intact military conference room of the Lordaeron Palace. Lordaeron was going through a huge change. But as the leader of the Lordaeron alliance, Terenas knew that if he did not handle the crisis well, the name of Lordaeron would go down in history. Everyone, Nesario pretended to be the Lord of Presto, and I am a true victim. I was bewitched by Neltharion's evil magic. Kalia was also killed by him. Sob sob. Terenas also had the potential to win an Oscar. He made good use of the grief of his beloved daughter's death to cry his heart out. He had accidentally been tricked by him. King Menethil, my condolences. Salas and the other kings comforted Terenas with a heavy heart. The kings almost lined up to comfort Terenas. Of course, they scolded Terenas for being shameless in their hearts. There was news this morning. It turned out that after the Barra family was declared a traitor yesterday morning, the nobles of Lordaeron could not wait to occupy Briar, which was in the Tirisful woodland, and Caer Daren, which was next to Lordaeron. You said you were blinded by magic? Did the thousands of nobles of Lordaeron get brainwashed? Who are you trying to fool? The kings scolded in their hearts. Of course, Terenas was also scolding the kings in his heart. Why are you all grieving? Look at your dark circles. You were obviously celebrating last night. Yes. Apart from Antonidas, who refused to drink, only Duque looked normal. He did not even have dark circles under his eyes. He looked like an obedient child who slept early and woke up early. At this moment, the best actor Duke still had a sorrowful expression on his face. Terenas thought to himself, as expected, Duque still has some feelings for Kalia. He saw Terenas look at Duque. All the kings gritted their teeth. Hey, you bastard. You're the one who's having fun. Why are you acting like a true gentleman? Lin Li did not hide Kalia's matter from Ryan and Andoin, and the two of them were dumbfounded. Alright Duque, you win. The next meeting of the throne made Tarina's heart sink into a pit of ice. He did not expect the situation to change overnight. In the throne meeting, Tarinas felt that the power of Lordaeron could still intimidate the surrounding countries, such as the Dalajan and Stormguard, without Xian who was willing to take the lead. But the countries intentionally or unintentionally avoided Lordaeron for every topic. Lordaeron could pay but they could not interfere. Didn't Lordaeron want orc slaves? You can take them all. Anyway, Lordaeron can take all 25,000 orcs. We don't need to set up a detention center in the country. The Riptide Castle wants food? The newest city of Alterank would help a portion. Duque's Murlocs would also use fish to solve a portion. The Western Wilderness could also provide some. Yes, problem solved. Chapter 626. When Rotterdam expressed its opinion on whether there was a need to build a watchtower, all the countries here eagerly agreed and sent their most elite troops. The dwarves and gnomes contributed to the construction of the railway, while the Stormwind Kingdom contributed the most infantry. Tarinas didn't even understand what a train was, but they were already voting for it. At the end of the day, the group of kings only recited what they had discussed last night like reciting a book. After a few rounds it was settled. Looking at the overwhelming atmosphere in the alliance, they didn't even need to vote. In front of the absolute majority, the 2 votes of the leader were useless. Tarinas couldn't suppress his anger at all. This was betrayal. This was a collective rebellion. Lordaeron's power. Lordaeron's right to speak. In one night it was completely taken away. At this moment, Tarinas even wanted to disband the alliance. But he couldn't say no. They didn't leave the alliance, and the countries were discussing serious matters within the framework of the alliance. The alliance was founded on freedom and equality, and they didn't do anything wrong. They just didn't bring Lordaeron to play. At the end of the morning's meeting, more than 20 military and trade agreements had been approved. Tarinas felt like he was a voting machine that was in charge of voting for the agreement. Of course, Tarinas vetoed all the projects that might cost a lot. Since there were no benefits, Lordaeron didn't want to be the rich guy. Tarinas made a decision. He wanted to see who the leader of the newly formed Alterac city was. If he could rope him in. The throne meeting ended and most of the kings got what they wanted. At night the banquet was filled with joy. Late at night when the banquet ended, the 8 leaders of the alliance lined up in a row, and the tragedy of using vomit to harm the saplings was repeated again. But late at night in the guest house of Stormwind City, the 3 leaders of Stormwind City gathered again after washing up. Are we just going to take away Tarinas's power without leaving the alliance? Lang expressed his doubts. Duque asked. Today, a bunch of kingdoms are unhappy with the leader's decision, and immediately leave the alliance and form a new alliance. How many kingdoms would be dissatisfied with a certain policy the next day? Would they be able to establish a third alliance? I'm only doing this to force Tarinas to give up the idea of treating the leader as a ruler, and force Rotterdam to join the alliance like a true ally. Andoin shrugged. Force? I don't think Tarinas will succumb that easily. The land of Rotterdam is vast. At most they can just seal themselves up like Kuel Salas's long ears. Of course the 2 countries are different. After all, there is no Warsong clan or Grom Hellscream in the Elven realm. If it were him, even Andoin would have to kneel if he wasn't careful. The current Mograine is no match for him. Anduin shrugged and had to agree. Mograine might not lose to Grom in terms of martial arts, but the difference in weapons and strength was too great. If he hadn't arrived in time, Lord Darren could have held a state funeral for Mograine. In winter, the warsong beastmen who lack food will naturally run out from the depths of Tirisful Forest to cause trouble. Grom isn't stupid. He won't mess with the rangers of Kuel Salis. Ryan and Anduin laughed shamelessly at the thought that the only troop in the entire human world that could fight against the warsong beastmen was in Duke's hands. When spring comes next year, when our newly popularized farming tools come in handy, the Rotterdam Kingdom will naturally return to the negotiating table. Lang was slightly stunned, but he quickly nodded. He really didn't know what Duque's brain was made of. Not only was he good at commanding troops, he was also a genius in magic, and he even had a knack for machinery. The new farming tool that he had brought out tonight had shocked the ministers in charge of agriculture. It was a brand new double-sided plow. Even if it was only single-sided, it was more than 5 times more reliable and flexible than the traditional single-sided plow. What was even more amazing was that the double-sided plow could be used to plow in both directions, and it could freely rotate at a 45-degree angle. The material of the plow was made of steel, and it was more durable than the traditional pig iron plow. The screw at the top of the plow nozzle was longer, and the length of the plow maintained a fixed distance, making the entire plow look rounder. If they didn't know that Duque was a mage, they would really think that Duque was an old expert who had been immersed in agriculture for decades. Food had never been valued by the nobles of the various countries, but after the 2 years of war and the depletion of almost all their food reserves, almost every king's eyes lit up at the sight of new technology related to food. Even though Duke had only asked Durban to make a prototype in half a day, when they saw how this new double-sided plow easily turned the frozen garden upside down, and when they were told that it had to be made by the dwarves, the big shots of the various countries immediately clenched their teeth and placed their bets. The orders that came flying in like snowflakes made Magni and Durban faint from joy. Duque was very happy too. According to the contract, he, as the inventor, could take 1/3 of the price of each plow as a patent fee. It wasn't just a double-sided plow but also a water wheel, a water-powered mill, a water-powered iron mill, and a whole bunch of other things. It could be foreseen how much manpower could be saved when all these things were popularized. The big shots of the Alliance had all seen the power of the double-sided plow, but as for the things that only existed on the blueprints, everyone was still skeptical. Out of respect for Duke Ku, he had reserved a batch of them. Lang was the only one who fully supported Duque. Next year Stormwind would taste the sweetness. Duque knew very well that the shortage of manpower after the war would be made up for in one fell swoop with his black technology. This was also why Stormwind dared to send 80,000 soldiers to guard the Door of Darkness. Duque continued, "The purpose of an alliance is to negotiate and fight for the same goal. Countries that insist on isolationism will definitely be heavily injured or even devoured by the new crisis. Only by staying within the framework of the alliance will there be true unity." The new crisis you speak of is. Lothar was more concerned about this. "Recently my men have been interrogating the orc captives, and I've heard some unsettling news. The orc demigod warlock ghoul, Dan, has an extraordinarily powerful master called Nazul. I've heard of this name." Anduin recalled the report from MI7. It was necessary to interrogate the important figures of the orc captives. It was even better that Lothar had heard of it. Duque began to make up a story. It was news from an orc that was about to die. That guy died right after he finished speaking, but I think it's quite believable. Ghoul, Dan first studied under the first shaman of the Shadow Moon clan, Nazul. Chapter 627. Who is Zhou Xian? He was the supervillain who had planned the first and second Dark Portal Wars. Who was Zhou? Perhaps before Duque crossed over, many people only remembered that the Lich King was Arthas. Not many people knew that there were 3 Lich Kings. Arthas Menethil was only the second leader. The real first Lich King was Zhou. Perhaps in terms of shamelessness, cunning and decisiveness he could not compare to Zhou Xian. But in terms of the degree of destruction Zhou Xian could not compare to Zhou. In the beginning the deceiver Jaden told all the orc shamans through an illusion that there was a threat from the Draenei. The illusion that appeared in front of Zhou was the soul of his wife. Zhou, who loved his wife, believed in the signs brought by this illusion. He gathered everyone to inform them of the situation. When Zhou signed a contract with the prophet Jaden, he soon found out that Jaden might have been lying. After asking the ancestor's soul, Zhou found out that he had unintentionally betrayed the entire orc race and violated the shaman's path. He was abandoned by the elements. In front of the powerful evil existence Jaden, Zhou chose to escape and give up. If he had the courage to reveal the devil's conspiracy to the entire orc tribe, then Zhou Xian would not have been involved, and no tribe would have crossed the dark portal to invade Azeroth. Unfortunately Zhou did not. After Zhou gave up listening to his orders, Jaden quickly went to find Zhou Xian. Zhou did not have the courage to stop his disciple, who had unparalleled talent and a sinister heart. He also did not have the courage to stand up and lead the tribe against the deceiver Jaden. When he was alive he was at most a powerful loser. However, Zhou's horror did not lie in his will or his magic power, but in his talent that he did not realize, his soul power. Not everyone was qualified to become a Lich King. Just like Duque, when he first transmigrated he was weak, and after death he was only fit to become a ghoul without self-will. The terrifying thing about Zhou was that his soul had been strengthened by strict shaman training. With the help of the demonic power he could easily spread his thoughts to tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of square kilometers. He could easily control the undead legion that was far away, constantly spreading death, and turning the new dead into undead monsters that could fight. Like a rolling snowball he could expand his army infinitely. That's right. Zhou, who had fallen into the hands of Jaden, was the most terrifying Zhou. Therefore when facing Zhou, Duque felt very bitter. If Zhou was killed in advance, Zhou's soul would immediately fall into the hands of one of the Burning Legion's bosses, Jaden, and the Lich King would be born in advance. If he ignored him, Zhou would come to the world of Azeroth to stir up trouble. If they forced him away he might scare his little heart. If he ran to the twisting nether he would still fall into Jaden's hands. The most important thing was that this time, Zhou would also bring the entire warlock of the Shadowmoon clan. These were not the warlocks who did not contribute when Gul'dan attacked last time, but the real elite warlocks. Magic battles would become commonplace. At this point in time, Zhou was not too strong. The initial estimate was that he was only at the Breaking Dawn level. But, Breaking Dawn my ass. According to the original history, Zhou would come to stir up trouble after getting one of the 3 artifacts, Gul'dan's skull. The destructive power of a Breaking Dawn wizard with an artifact in hand was close to that of a demigod. Damn Gul'dan, he died with only his skull left and he still could not let people feel at ease. When Duque thought of this he felt stifled. It was not that he did not think of getting this so-called artifact. The problem was that this artifact's predecessor was Gul'dan's head. If he had the ability to defeat Gul'dan and twist his head off to use as an artifact, Duque would have already swept the entire tribe by himself. At that time when he died, could he pick up the corpse? In theory he could. Remember, Gul'dan opened the tomb of Sargeras and was engulfed by the endless demons that surged out. If he had gone too early, even a demigod could not withstand the attack. How could he, Duque, withstand it with his small body? If he had gone too late, sorry, the sea is so big, go find it yourself. Duque clearly remembered that Gul'dan's skull was picked up by the chief of the bone-chewing clan, Harkin Cranium Crusher. But when did this guy go through the dark portal and roll back to planet Draenor? There was no record at all. In addition, Gul'dan's skull contained Gul'dan's memories and had attributes similar to the whispers of the ancient gods that had driven Nesario crazy. What artifact? It was clearly a magic artifact. If an ordinary person held it, they would definitely become mentally ill. Thinking of this, Duque could only sigh. A transmigrator was not omnipotent. Since he could not use foresight to prevent this tragedy, he could only do his best. This was the reason why Duque had released so much black technology. Well, after Duque described the danger of Nazul and exaggerated that he had the power to open the dark portal, Lang and Andoan's faces were as black as the bottom of a pot. Andoan said, "All right then, since you have determined that Nazul will lead the tribe to attack again. So how long do you think we have?" Duque was a little speechless. Because of his appearance, World War II, which was supposed to end 6 years after the dark portal, had already ended at the end of the second year. And Nazul had sent his men to play tricks on Azeroth in the 8th year of the Dark Portal's history. Duque made a judgment and raised 2 fingers. 2 years. Maybe less, maybe more. Draenor is indeed being destroyed, but the process is still relatively slow. This is because we have destroyed or crippled almost all the top-ranked tribes in the war. The hunting grounds of Draenor will be much emptier. Lang rubbed his chin. So the orcs will first fight amongst themselves and then have the time to attack our alliance? Duque said with certainty, yes. Just like how Tarinas wanted to annex Alterac. The orc clans that have preserved their strength must first be shuffled before they will respond to Nazul's call. Lang nodded. Well, although another war is not good news, we are fortunate that our alliance has a very far-sighted commander like you. 2 years is enough for us to do a lot of things. We don't know anything about the railway that you mentioned. You will be busy for a long time when we go back this time. Andoan chuckled. Duque nodded. Before that, I may have to take a leave. Huh. Lang was puzzled. I'm going to practice magic. Oh, I almost forgot that you are a mage. Duque was speechless. Chapter 628. At 3 o'clock in the morning, Duque, who had returned to his bedroom, looked out of the window into the distance. Thick darkness covered Duque's entire field of vision. The hustle and bustle of the day of triumph still echoed in his ears, and Duque knew that new challenges would continue to come. Since he had become a part of Azeroth, he couldn't ignore the challenges that came one after another. That's right, before the Titans of the Pantheon really reached Azeroth and fought the Burning Legion, the world of Azeroth was like a damn defensive game. No matter how many waves of enemies you defeated, there would always be new enemies coming. Persevere and there might be a chance of survival. Give up and that would be the end of all things. Looking back, the Windrunner sisters who had been hugging each other to sleep, raised their eyebrows and opened their sleepy eyes. Aurelia said, Duque, are you done talking? Sasha said, go to sleep. You've done very well today. Leave tomorrow's matters to tomorrow. With that, the 2 warm and fragrant female bodies trembled and moved to a gentle position. Duque smiled and lay down, hugging Sasha on his left and Aurelia on his right. If there were no future crises, this would already be a perfect life. In his heart, Duque said to himself, yes. The people I love, the people I cherish, the world I love, this is what I'm fighting for in Azeroth. In the following days, Duque was very busy. Whether it was coordinating post-war reconstruction with the various countries, discussing with the dwarves how to modify various farm tools, or carrying out his railway plan. Time: December 31st, 2 years after entering the dark portal. The news that Duque had been waiting for came. Alexstras's magic transmission. Okay. That guy Maligos has finally gone crazy enough. That guy froze Nasario's head, then took him to the place where the Blue Dragon Legion was annihilated. After crying and laughing for a long time, he was finally willing to take the traitor's head back. Duque held his forehead and smiled bitterly. His wife and all his children were killed and he couldn't take revenge for 10,000 years. Anyone would probably go crazy. How much rationality a fellow like Maligos could regain was already the result of the dragons burning incense and praying to Buddha. However, Duque couldn't help but sigh at the thought of the Blue Dragon King's crazy actions in the future. As for Maligos, Duque could only take advantage of him. When will the celebration of the Dragon Sleep Shrine be held? Come to Dragonbone Wasteland at 9 o'clock in the morning on the 1st of January. Huh. Are you in such a hurry? The ceremony has been prepared for a long time. A large number of dragons from the other 3 races are waiting for that bastard Maligos. The queen gritted her teeth. That's right. A group of dragons happily celebrated the killing of the traitor, spitting out dragon's breath and roasting beef in the snowy land. They waited for a long time but the traitor's head did not appear. Even though Nozdormu had temporarily handed over Nasario's corpse early on, the head was the most valuable of all things. The dragon head had a very sacred meaning. Without the traitor's head, it was a pity no matter what, as if it was missing a lot of things. After waiting for a full week, Maligos was finally willing to bring back the traitor Black Dragon King's head. It would be strange if the other 3 dragons were not sulking. There was nothing they could do. The 4 dragon kings were all dragon aspects, after all they were of the same rank. Unless a certain dragon did something too outrageous and was considered by the other dragons to have exceeded the scope of redemption, they would bear with it for the sake of being of the same race. All right. I'll be there on time tomorrow. Time stepped into the dark portal. On the 1st of January of the 3rd year, the kings of Lordaeron were still busy with various meetings. Post-war reconstruction, bilateral trade, multilateral trade, redemarcation of territorial borders, determination of sea power. All kinds of troubles were still plaguing every king and even every lord under them. Originally in Stormwind these kinds of matters could not be separated from Duque, but Duque had to first ask for leave from Lang. At 8:30 it was still busy in Duque's room. Even though Duque was the only one going to the Wyrmrest Shrine to attend the Dragon Race's celebration, it was as if the entire upper echelons of Stormwind were going to attend. Lang and Anduin were chatting in the corner of the room. Aurelia, who was dressed in a Green Ranger's outfit, crossed her arms in front of her abdomen, and supported her elbows with her palms. She leaned against the wall, watching her sister and Elugia fiddle with Duque's clothes. Duke, who looked like he had nothing to live for and was already a useless cat, posed in the shape of a cross. He was extremely miserable but he still had to look straight ahead. Let's add a belt? The mage robe is too floaty. Sasha held her chin and frowned. I think so too. It's spirited. Elugia nodded. Duque bared his teeth. Even if I dress well, will the dragons appreciate it? By the way, you guys woke me up at 7 and it's been an hour and a half. Are you still not done? Whether they appreciate it or not is another matter. The key is that you have to show your attitude. I've never heard of any human being entering the Wyrmrest Shrine in the past 10,000 years. Elugia, who had always been weak, unexpectedly voiced out her opinion. Duque couldn't help but complain in his heart. Do I have to tell you that the dragons will not be able to withstand the siege of the Wyrmrest Shrine in the future, and seek help from the other races to make the place as lively as a market? At this time Aurelia added another stab. No, I've seen Her Majesty Alexstrasza in human attire. It's very fitting. Damn it, as long as a woman had a good figure and was good-looking, any man would find her to be pleasing to the eye if she wore a 3-point armor or something. Complaining was one thing, but Dooku could only obediently be his human clothes rack. After much effort, it was finally over. Dooku set off with a wave of blessings. Almost as soon as he crossed the portal to the Dragonbone Wilderness, Dooku froze like a dog. The coldness of the Dragonbone Wilderness in the extreme north of the continent was completely different from the coldness of the insignificant northern Lordaeron continent. It was like the winter in the south before transmigration and the winter in Siberia. How could they be compared? Dooku felt that he was about to freeze to death. Whoosh! A warm current rose from the magic circuit of phoenix flames, and almost at the same time, a warm fire elemental shield covered his body. It was not too hot, but it was very good to resist the biting cold of no scent. Dooku finally came to his senses. It was Krasis. "Welcome, my old friend." The tall Krasis came over and gave Dooku a courteous hug. It turned out that the man and the dragon were just acquaintances, but after Dooku rescued the Red Dragon Queen and plotted to kill Nesario, they became friends. "Your Majesties will arrive in half an hour. Now let me introduce you to the representatives of the various races." Chapter 629. This is the ambassador of the Green Dragon Army, Lord Isarios. First, Krasis introduced a male high elf with golden hair and green armor. He was dressed like a druid. "Hello, I'm Dooku." Dooku shook hands with the Lord. As a dragon, the human form was definitely not their original form. It was already very polite for them to shake hands with you in human form. Otherwise, you would only see their toes in their dragon form. Not to mention, Lord Isarios was one of the top male dragons in the Green Dragon Legion. His dragon back was as tall as a 3-story building. "Hello, I'm Isarios. I'm sorry, but Her Majesty Isra asked me to tell you that the Emerald Dream has been corrupted. She can only send a spirit to attend the ceremony. When the problem is solved, she will personally thank you." "I understand. Thank Her Majesty Isra for my kindness." Next. This is the ambassador of the Blue Dragon Army, Kalecgos. Under Krasis' guidance, Duke easily spotted Kalecgos. This was a dragon with dark blue hair and a human warrior's attire. He had the appearance of a human male. He was betrayed by Deathwing 10,000 years ago and was killed in the battle. In human form, Kalecgos had a square and handsome face. It was hard to imagine the legendary deeds of this guy in the original history. He was shot down from the sky in Kuel Salis by the dwarves with muskets. He was controlled by a demon in the Sunwell and turned into the first boss of the Sunwell. He was killed by countless players over and over again. He was chased by the black dragons in the Cataclysm and went to seek refuge with Azhara. In the end, he found Azuragos, the old blue dragon who liked the soul healer. He was beaten up by the Twilight Dragon, and the orange staff girl who supported him died. He was shot down by the Horde's airship during the Battle of Theramore. Deathwing instantly destroyed the Horde's airship. What made Dooku accept it was that this guy actually became a dragon aspect in the original history. Of course, the biggest headache for countless players was that he would pick up Jaina in the future. If one's toughness could determine one's combat value, then this guy's toughness was 5. That's right. The term Battle 5 trash was referring to him. Seeing that Dooku was a little embarrassed, Kalecgos was a little puzzled. "Hello, Sir Marcus." "What the hell?" No, it's the first time we've met. I'm just not used to blue hair." Dooku wasn't lying through his teeth. In anime, some female characters had long, flowing, lake blue hair, and you would always feel that they were very beautiful, elegant, and beautiful. But in reality, if you saw a blue-haired girl, this feeling was like looking at a big bun with a tuft of moldy blue hair. It was as strange as it could get. If it weren't for Dooku's high sense of humor, perhaps Dooku would have already burst out laughing. To be fair, Kalegos was a good-tempered fellow, but his standards were too low. He smiled. I'm sorry to make you uncomfortable, but I have a feeling that we'll meet again in the future. That's right. With the relationship between the hero and the boss. Where was the third ambassador? Following Krasis' hand, Duque couldn't see anything. The muscles on Krasis' face twitched, and he pressed down with his left hand that he had used to introduce himself. Okay, Duque finally saw it. This is the Bronze Dragon Ambassador Chromie. The Bronze Dragon Ambassador Chromie had white hair and 2 buns on each side of her head. She was only as tall as Duke's waist, and she appeared in the form of a female dwarf priest. At first glance, Duke felt that she looked like a cute creature that girls liked. Wow, so cute. I want to pick her up and play with her. This was not a little loli who, in the eyes of those weird uncles, would receive a minimum of 3 years in prison or a maximum of life imprisonment. This was a legal loli. And a gnome loli at that. Woo-woo. I want to pick her up and rub her face or something. Chromie was one of the rare bronze dragons that was relatively friendly to humans. In history, she didn't even have any record of fighting in public. But since she could stand together with Krasis, Kalegos and Isarios, these epic-ranked dragons, she couldn't be that weak. Hey. Your Excellency Marcus. Hey. Mr. Duque. Hey. Sorry, I was distracted. Yes, he was indeed distracted. Hearing Chromie's cute voice in her gnome form, Duque really felt like he was in a trance because of her cuteness. I feel like you're thinking about something very rude. The little gnome put her hands on her hips in dissatisfaction. This look is even cuter. Can I pick you up and play with you? In the end, Duque didn't dare to say this out loud. If she was beaten up by Chromie for such a silly reason, then even Alexstrasza wouldn't protect her. No. I was just thinking, if there's anything you need my help with, I hope you can look for me in the future. Then can you not be so active? The complaints about you changing history are almost piling up to the roof of my dragon cave. Sorry, but this... After introducing the 3 ambassadors, Krasis finally got to the main topic. Oh, your majesties are here. Then Duque, please. Krasis stretched out his hand gracefully, and a huge rectangular flying carpet made of fire elements suddenly appeared in front of Duque. What a beautiful move. Fire elements had always given people the impression that they were violent and untamable. But in the hands of Krasis, a master magus of the dragon race, not only did it take on a physical form, it also became a flying carpet that was harmless to humans. Duque's system genie instantly scanned it and confirmed this. Alright, I'll give you 101 points for acting tough. I'm not afraid of you getting arrogant with an extra point. Duque grandly stepped forward. Kalegos noticed that Duque had clearly seen through the mysteries of the flying carpet before stepping on it. This was strange. One had to know that Duque was only a morning star wizard. How could he have such good eyesight? Forget ordinary mortals, even a radiant moon great wizard would feel weak at the sight of this. But Duque, good eyesight, good spirit, good courage. Kalegos couldn't help but have a higher opinion of Duque. Stepping on the flying carpet, 1 guest and 4 hosts followed it at high speed towards the dragon slumber shrine. Under normal circumstances, just the bone-chilling wind that blew over would be enough to freeze them. Under Krasis's fire elemental force, not only was the biting cold air chased to one side, but even the chilly wind that blew towards them was dispersed. The warm wind was as comfortable as taking a stroll in the fields in autumn. You're tuning in to the Zhou Xian's Legacy YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.